Got a lot of habits. I'ma do a lot of laughing. Chill and she get.
So, I'm on chapter 3 now. I think that I'm gonna do things a little different. I'm gonna read a little bit more than a chapter. I'm gonna get a couple chapters in this time. Also, I need to start cussing less. I watched back chapter 2 and every other word was an F word, and I'm like, you feel me? I need to sound a little less ignorant, so I'm gonna just hop straight into chapter 3 performance. Sunday morning at Resurrection Baptist Church, and the monotone voice of Reverend Claudius Amaker echoed across the old rickety wooden ceilings, raining down the infallible wood of God upon us. My godmother Gigi, pronounced JJ, always dressed up for church. To her, the Sunday presentation of yourself was an intentional act of devotion to the Lord. She wore one of those pristine floral church lady dresses perfectly accessorized with the church pearls, and the church hat with the giant satin flower pinned to it. During the sermons, she'd find herself eyes closed, shaking her head in agreement, chiming in, "Preach, pastor, say it again," or just a simple, mm-hmm. Every once in a while, she'd glance down at me, checking to make sure I was paying attention. But I was 9 years old. People clapped and swayed and cried and prayed. All the while, my 9-year-old mind couldn't help but wonder if this service was ever going to end. Except every third Sunday, when the visiting Reverend Ronald West would take the pulpit. Reverend Maker was our home pastor, and he would talk about the power of God, but all I could hear was the voice of adults in Charlie Brown. Wah, 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 wah. Reverend West, though, he'd show you God's power. He wore stylish, red, Castle glasses with a matching 3-piece suit, punctuated with the standard bleach white Baptist pocket hanky. He was 6'3", 210 pounds of God's glory. And do not let him near your piano, because after Reverend West played it, you could just wheel that thing out to the trash. Reverend West led the choir. He always started off seated, playing the piano with his left hand, directing the choir with his right, calmly leaning into some slow Mahalia Jackson-style ballad to warm up the elders. I hope I pronounced that right. Mahalia Jackson-style ballad to warm up the elders. This was just the calm before the storm. Slowly, he transformed.
Push that shit out.
I need to read that paragraph back, like, you feel me? Like I went to a Baptist church. Like, let me get it. Slowly, he would transform, allowing the music to carry him into a trance. Tears filled his eyes, sweat building on his brow as he rummaged for his hanky to clear the fog from his glasses. The drums, the bass, the voices, all rising at his command, as if imploring the Holy Spirit to show itself. And then, like clockwork, an ecstatic crescendo, and boom! The Holy Ghost filled the room. Reverend West explodes from his seat, kicking over the stool, both hands possessed, banging in praise on the piano, and then with a guttural roar, he blazes across the stage to the 3-tiered electric organ, demanding that it do what God intended it to do, swirling massive orchestral Baptist chords, all the while sweat flying, the congregation erupting, singing, dancing, all women passing out in the aisle, weeping, Reverend West pointing directly, never once losing control of the choir and the band until his body would collapse in surrender and gratitude for the merciful bliss of God's love. Amen. Yes. Yes. Whew. Let the Lord's praise calm down. Let the Lord's praise calm down as I fix my mixer. Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. Yes. Let the Lord's praise calm down. Yes, yes, yes. I guarantee you that happened right before offering. You know they get the church lit right before offering. Right before offering. Somebody just put their card note in the basket. As the music settled, Gigi returned to her seat, dabbing tears from her eyes and my little heart pounding, not even totally sure what the sweet vibration was inside my body, and all I could think was, I want to do that. I want to make people feel like that. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. It's always been funny to me that the first prayer my grandmother taught me was actually a rap. Gigi was Jesus' homegirl. I've met many people who say they're religious, but I've never met anyone who lived out Christ's gospel the way my grandmother did. She walked and talked and embodied the example of Christ. This was not a Sunday thing for her. This was a 24/7, 365 thing. Everything she said, everything she did, everything she thought, it was glorified God. Gigi worked the graveyard shift at the hospital, which allowed both of my parents to maintain full-time jobs. She watched my siblings and me during the day. He should have said my siblings and I during the day. And worked at night. At the young age of 4 or 5, hearing the phrase, the graveyard shift, filled me with images of ghouls and demons, and my superhero grandmother slaying vile creatures just so she could feed me, while I lay in bed, safe and sound, caressing the silken edges of my cream-colored puff blankie. I used to beg her, please don't go, Gigi. Please stay here with me. I felt such guilt. My impressionable mind twisted the situation into a sense of personal failure and weakness. I thought, what kind of kid stays in bed while his grandmother has to fight monsters in a graveyard at midnight? It felt as though she was risking her life to protect me. And in some sense, maybe she was. Not her life, but she was certainly sacrificing a big part of herself for me, my siblings, and my parents. One day I'm going to take care of you, Gigi, I said. Oh, thank you, lover boy. That was her nickname for me. I'm seeing more subtle implications that Will feels that he has something that he owes to women in his family. He's paying dues that he feels like he owes to one group of women to another woman that may not necessarily have his best interests at heart as much. And I'm starting to think it's rubbing off on his daughter, but I'm not going to go that deep. One day we were sitting on Gigi's front porch. She was crocheting a sweater, which at some point I was going to be forced to wear. When a homeless woman walked by, her clothes were filthy. Her face was darkened and haggard, a mix of dirt and sunburn. Her front teeth were missing, and even though she was down on the street, I could smell the pungent reek of urine. I had never seen a homeless person before. She looked like a witch to me, and I prayed she just walk by me. But Gigi stopped her. Excuse me, miss, what's your name? I was horrified. I thought, Gigi, what are you doing? Just let her go. This woman was clearly not used to being asked her name, or at least not recently. She seemed to almost not have remembered it. After a long pause, she sized up my grandmother and said, Clara. Well, this is Miss Clara, Gigi said, as though they were old friends. With that, Gigi walked down off the porch and put her arm around Clara. I'm Helen, Gigi said, and invited her into the house. My mind was furiously flip-flopping between disgust and terror, but it was about to get way worse. First, they went into the kitchen. Gigi didn't give Miss Clara food that was already prepared in the refrigerator. She cooked her a fresh meal from scratch. While Clara ate, Gigi handed her a robe, took all of her clothes, and washed and folded them. Will, Gigi called out. What could she possibly want with me, I thought. Yes, Gigi? Go run Miss Clara a bath. As I think back, this may be the moment where one of my first famous movie catchphrases was born. Oh, hell nah, I thought. I ran the bath. Gigi then took Miss Clara upstairs and bathed her with her bare hands, brushed her teeth, and washed her hair. I wanted to scream, Gigi, stop touching that dirty lady. She's going to stank up our bathtub. But I knew better than to say that. They were both about the same size, so Gigi took Clara to her closet and began holding up clothes in front of her in the mirror to which she would see which ones fit. Miss Clara was gasping with gratitude through tears. She kept saying, this is too much, Helen, way too much. Please stop. I don't deserve this. But Gigi wasn't having it. She'd held both of Clara's hands, gently shaking them to get Clara to look in her eyes. Jesus loves you, and so do I, Gigi said. That was the end of the discussion. Gigi didn't make a distinction between your burdens and her own. She truly believed the message of the gospel. She saw loving and serving others not as a responsibility, but as an honor. I never heard her gripe about working the graveyard shift. Never heard her say a negative word about my father, even though he had beaten her daughter. With her Bible in hand, her arms were open, not only for us, but for everyone. She was joyfully her brothers and sisters' keeper. Why can't... It's like, as I'm seeing these characteristics in women that I could see would make Will Smith be protective over women in his family, that kind of stood out to me that, like, so you're acknowledging the fact that there is a certain responsibility to the men in these women's lives. So, like, how is it that you could watch your grandmother never say anything about your father, even though he wasn't to his family what you've been to yours? Like, he hasn't earned what you have for his respect, but he got that respect from your grandmother, even in his misappropriate actions. But you, in being in doing everything, like, as close to the book as you possibly can, you can't get that same respect. I seen a video clip the other day of somebody making jokes about Will in front of Jada.
Now, they asked me to ask you a question, and I do have a question I've been wanting to ask you for a long time. And it's pretty simple. How do you put up with Will? I mean, really, look, you're intelligent and talented and successful and beautiful, and you have all of these qualities that, quite honestly, Will doesn't have. Oh my God. And I want to know how, after all these years, you do it. How do you do it?
Was what the man saying about Will less disrespectful than what Chris Rock said about her? The answer is no. It's a perspective thing in the way that you treat people. And Will feels this need to have this undying, like, love for his family that causes him to sacrifice so much for them. And it's just his wife consistently shows us that she doesn't give a She gives him her ass to kiss. Gigi was the moral compass that guided my entire life. She was my conduit to God. If Gigi was happy with me, that meant that God was happy with me. But if she was unhappy, that meant that the universe was displeased. Gigi's approval of me meant that the universe approved of whatever I was doing. In my mind, she had this direct line to God. When she was talking, I felt like I was getting explicit instructions from God. Her approval was how I would access and harness the power and favor of the Lord. Gigi personified my understanding of holiness and divinity. To this day, when I ask myself, what makes a person good? My mind immediately pictures my grandmother. When I sat in those hard wooden pews at Resurrection Baptist as a church, I didn't understand the meaning of the sermons or the intricacies of scripture. But I got Gigi. She lived as Christ taught her to live. She walked the walk, and through her, I saw God's love. I felt God's love. And the love gave me a sense of hope. Gigi was light. She illuminated the possibility that life could be beautiful. When I think back to my childhood, I visualize my father, my mother, and Gigi arranged as a philosophical triangle. My father was one side of the triangle, discipline. He taught me how to work, how to be relentless. He instilled in me an ethic that it's better to die than to quit. My mother, education. She believed that knowledge was the irrevocable key to a successful life. She wanted me to study, to learn, to grow, to cultivate a deep, broad understanding to either know what you're talking about or be quiet. Gigi, love. God. Whereas I tried to please my mother and father so I wouldn't get into trouble, I wanted to please Gigi so I could bathe in the transcendent ecstasy of divine love. These three ideas, discipline, education, and love, would fight for my attention throughout the rest of my life. Gigi was obsessed with this one Broadway play from the 1960s called Pearly Victorious. That was turned into a musical, Pearly, in 1970, written by Ossie Davis. It was the story of a black preacher named Pearly who went down to Georgia, opened a church, and began saving enslaved people from an evil plantation owner. One year, Gigi decided all the kids at the church had to perform Pearly. We had to learn every word and every song front to back. She would have me and my siblings practice in the living room, record player blaring, as we sang and danced along. 40 years later, I could still sing every song from Pearly. Gigi was always encouraging me to perform. She was the self-appointed head of special events at Resurrection Baptist Church and organized all the Easter recitations, nativity reenactments, the Thanksgiving feeding of the poor, holiday talent shows, post-baptism potluck dinners, and on and on. You name it, she planned it. As soon as my brother and sisters and I could talk, Gigi had us up in front of the congregation, giving a rendition of some biblical something for all those to see and enjoy. Both my parents encouraged music as well. We all took piano lessons as kids because mom played. My brother Harry blew a saxophone badly for a while. I took drum lessons briefly in middle school, including a thankfully forgettable stint abusing a snare in Our Lady of Lourdes marching band. But the piano was the only instrument that actually liked me. One of the more famous moments in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was the final scene of the pilot, where after an argument with Uncle Phil, he leaves the room and I sit down on the piano bench. The producers had originally planned on me sitting with my back to the piano so they could push the camera in on my face as I pondered the profundity of Uncle Phil's closing words. But when I sat down, I faced the piano and began playing my mom's favorite, Beethoven's Furlies. James Avery stunned, stepped back around the corner. The set went silent as everyone realized the show was about to be special. The whole point of the scene had been to never judge a book by its cover. The producers were so inspired by this improvisational moment that they kept it, and it became the defining thematic premise of the entire series. Oh, to know that that moment that added so much nuance to both characters and gave so much personality to the episode that would grow into the series, that's an interesting scene to know was ad-libbed. And next time I'm looking at Screen Rant list of the top 10 ad-libbed moments in television and movies, they better bring this up because that was definitely up there. It was beautiful. And he didn't mess up or nothing. Like, I'm going to assume they probably redid it, but just to know that it was an improvised thought from him was interesting. Very, very interesting. But my greatest piano performance had come a decade earlier. I was 11 years old and Gigi had organized a children's talent show, followed by an Easter egg hunt and Resurrection Hall. I had been practicing the Morris Albert song Feelings as a part of my piano lessons. Gigi had made me play it for her every night for a month. Then she sprung it on me. Loverboy, I want you to play this song for everybody at church on Easter. At the time, it was the only song I knew how to play. I had never played the piano in front of anybody except my family. Wait, Gigi, no, I can't. I'm not ready, I said. I'm gonna mess up the notes. She smiled. Oh, baby, she said, gently caressing my cheek. God doesn't care if you hit the notes, right? Gigi had a magical invisible power she would never apply force, yet no one could resist her overwhelming energy. And so it was. That 2 weeks later, I had found myself dressing in a cream, pinstripe, three-piece Easter suit, sitting at the piano in Resurrection Hall, Gigi beaming in the wings. My hands trembling, 200 faces gazing, silence, anticipation, my heart pounding out of my chest. It felt like it wanted to leave, whether I decided to or not, and Gigi gave me the nod. I took a deep breath, somehow found an F, and began. The way the piano was situated on stage, I had eye contact with Gigi the whole time. Morris Albert's Feelings was ringing through Resurrection Hall for an audience of 200 people, but I was only playing for one person, and the look on her face, I still struggle to describe it. The words pride or approval are pale and inadequate. I can only say that I've been chasing that look in the eyes of every woman I've ever loved ever since. I've never felt more certain of someone's adoration. All my career, my performances, my albums, everything has been a relentless, unbroken quest to relive that delicious purity I felt when I played Feelings at Resurrection Hall for my Gigi. I didn't have to do anything different. I didn't have to be anything different. In that moment, just as I was, bum notes and all, I was enough. Will, you're married, bro. Like that. All my career, my performances, my albums, everything has been a relentless, unbroken quest to relive that delicious purity I felt when I played Feelings at Resurrection Hall for my Gigi. Walking on stage and slapping Chris Rock at the Oscars was a relentless, unbroken quest to relive the delicious purity that he felt when he played Feelings at Resurrection Hall for his Gigi. Like, all he needs is for Jay to just be like, yeah, you're good enough. You are, and it's crazy. He's probably the best. He's probably the best. And all he needs is for a woman in his life that he loves to be like, you are good enough. And he's crying out for it. I began to perform all the time, whether I was making up skits for my parents or reenacting a movie for my friends or singing songs at church for Gigi. Performance became my little secret oasis of love. It gave me the warmth of affection, but behind the protection of a mask. It was perfect. I could hide myself and be loved all at the same time, mitigating the risk of vulnerability, but gaining everything. I was hooked, but it would take another 40 years before I understood that I had misinterpreted my grandmother's deepest lesson. If I had understood what she was truly trying to teach me, this book would have ended right here. But as you can see, there's 19 more chapters. That's good for me. One year during Christmas Eve services, the Resurrection Hall, decorated from entry to altar, adorned to a level that even Jesus may have thought was a little bit too much, Gigi was peacefully swaying to the choir's soothing rendition of Blessed Assurance. I watched her rock and hum, and I found myself becoming hypnotized by her tranquility. She was not quite smiling, but the soft rise in the corners of her mouth betrayed an invincible serenity. I would later come to recognize this look as the look that people have when they know things that the rest of us don't. She caught me staring. Yes, lover boy? Gigi, why you so happy all the time? I whispered. Now she was fully smiling. She paused, like a grandmother preparing to sow essential seeds. She leaned over and whispered in my ear, I trust God, and I'm so thankful for his grace in my life. I know that every single breath I take is a gift, and it's impossible to be unhappy when you're grateful. He put the sun in the sky and the moon. He gave me you and our whole family, and for all that, he only gave me one job. What's your job, Gigi? To love and care for all his children, she said. So everywhere I go, I try to make everything I touch better. Then she reached out and touched the end of my nose. Boop. See? I don't know if that's exactly how that happened, but that was a really cute story. I've been called nigger to my face 5 or 6 times in my life. Twice by police officers, a couple of times by random strangers, once by a white friend, but never by anyone who I thought was smart or strong. Hello, I'm gonna read that again. I've been called nigger to my face 5 or 6 times in my life. Twice by police officers, a couple of times by random strangers, once by a white friend, but never anyone who I thought was smart or strong. I once heard some of the white kids at school yell joke about catch a nigger, kill a nigger day, an apparently well-known holiday in their neighborhoods. Back in the early 1900s, some of Philly's white community members would pick a specific day to assault any black person they saw walking around their neighborhood. 70 years later, some of my Catholic school classmates still thought it was funny to joke about it, but every encounter I've had with overt racism was with people I estimated to be weak enemies at best. They always seemed unintelligent, angry, and to me, easily circumvented or defeated. So consequently, overt racism, although dangerous and ever-present as an external threat, never made me feel inferior. Hello. This that shit I wanted you to talk, Will. This is the shit I wanted. This that talk I wanted you to talk, Will. This that talk I wanted you to talk. I was raised to believe that I am inherently equipped to handle any problems that may arise in my life, racism included. Some combination of hard work, education, and God would topple any and all obstacles and enemies. The only variable was the level of commitment to the fight. But as I grew older, I started to become more aware of the silent, unspoken, and more insidious forms of prejudice lurking around me. I get in more trouble for doing the same things my white classmates would do. I got called on less often, and I feel like teachers took me less seriously. I spent most of my childhood straddling and navigating two cultures. My black world of home in the neighborhood, Resurrection Baptist and Daddy-O's shop, and the white world of school, Catholic church, and the prevailing culture of America. I went to an all-black church, lived in an all-black street, and grew up playing with mostly other black kids. But at the same time, I was only one of 3 black kids attending Our Lady of Lourdes, the local Catholic K-8. At school, it was impossible to not feel like an outcast. I didn't dress like the white kids. I didn't listen to Led Zeppelin or AC/DC, and I never got my head around lacrosse. I simply didn't fit in. But back in the neighborhood, I didn't quite fit in either. I didn't talk like the other kids or use the slang they did. My mother didn't even allow us to say ain't at home. My mom didn't like finna and pissed. Those were my mom's not cuss words. My mom worked for the school board of Philadelphia, and she was a stickler for words. One day she heard me yell out to my friends, "Hey, where y'all gonna be at?" Her head whipped around in disbelief like that girl from The Exorcist. "I hope they're gonna be behind that preposition," mom said. At Catholic school, no matter how well-spoken or intelligent, I was still the black kid. In Winfield, no matter how up I was on the latest music or fashion, I was never quite black enough. I became one of the first hip-hop artists who was considered safe enough for white audiences. But with black audiences, I was labeled soft because I wasn't rapping about hardcore gangster shit. This racial dynamic is something that has plagued me in various forms throughout my entire life. But just like at home, performance and humor became my sword and shield. I was your classic class clown, telling jokes, making silly noises, being all around ridiculous. As long as I was the funny kid, it meant I wasn't just the black kid. Funny is colorblind. Comedy diffuses all negativity. It is impossible to be angry, hateful, or violent when you're doubled over laughing. He didn't really say that. This is the most hypocritical paragraph I'd ever read in my entire life. Funny is colorblind. Comedy diffuses all negativity. It's impossible to be angry, hateful, or violent when you're doubled over laughing. Nigga, you did not write that in your book and then go slap a nigga at the Oscars for making a joke. A comedian. That didn't, come on, bro. But I started to notice that a joke that would kill at Our Lady of Lourdes would garner blank stares at Winfield and vice versa. I realized that white people and black people respond differently to my humor. My white friends tended to lean into my bigger, broader moments when I was light and silly and displayed a cartoon-like physicality. One of the white boys in Lourdes once tried to light his fart in the bathrooms. I thought it was a little too far to get a laugh, but it worked. They also liked puns and wordplay, witty sarcasm. They demanded a happy ending. Everyone had to come out okay. My black friends preferred their jokes more real and raw and demanded a gritty slice of the truth at the core of the comedy. They saw my silliness as weakness. I would have gotten the whole shit kicked out of me if I had tried to light a fart in Winfield. They respond better when my humor sprang from strength, from more of a battle mentality. Put downs, insults, disses, and nothing played bigger than smashing somebody who was talking shit. They loved it when someone got what was coming to them. Karmic justice, even if the somebody was them. As black people, we love laughing at ourselves. When we can joke about something, our pains, our problems, our tragedies, it makes them just a little bit more bearable. When we can joke about something, our pains, our problems, our tragedies, it makes them just a little bit more bearable. Will Smith, but he wasn't being himself when he did that. I don't want to keep talking about this, but the reality situation is like, bro, that was just such an out of character moment for this person. And it's like, Jesus. And now I'm looking at his biography, and it's like, bro, the words that you spoke not that long ago just completely go against everything in your actions. Everything. Oh, not to mention, this is what I was thinking as I was reading. The reason black kids wanted him to be more real, whereas the white kids always wanted the fantastical comedy slapstick happy ending stuff, is because the black kids looked at him as a human being who should offer something to the world, whereas the white kids looked at him as a joke, as entertainment. And it's kind of odd to me that he couldn't, like, in writing this, as a child, I don't think you'd understand the dichotomy, but in writing this, I would think that you would notice, like, yeah, my white friends wanted me to act like a clown, my black friends wanted me to act like a real person. And yes, you should get the whole beat out of you. If you trying to light farts around black kids, like, you're being dumb, and that's the type of dumb that in the future, if you carry that as a black person, you gonna get yourself messed up. You're gonna get yourself messed up. And that's why as little black kids, it's like you can sense danger when somebody start acting like that. As a little black kid, you don't completely 100% understand the world, but you know the world enough to know that, like, behaving in that manner is dangerous. So they're not going to applaud you for acting like a jackass. Whereas you're your white counterparts will. I learned to move between these two worlds. If I was making the kid on the corner laugh, I wasn't getting my ass kicked. If I was making the white kid at school laugh, I wasn't a nigger. If I was making daddy-o laugh, it meant my family was safe. I began to equate laughter with safety. The little scientist in my head started searching for what the number one answer is: the perfect mythical joke that obliterates everyone who hears it. No matter their race, creed, color, age, nation of origin, sexual orientation, no one will be safe from the power of this joke. Throughout my career, and quite honestly my entire life, this has been an obsession for me. I am forever seeking the perfect wording, the perfect tone of voice, the perfect delivery, the perfect physicality, the perfect swagginess, all of which would coalesce into a perfect moment of comedic nirvana and unalloyed human harmony. But despite my high aspirations, life at Our Lady of Lourdes grew more and more difficult. I've always been reluctant to ascribe the escalating issues between myself and the school to racism, the subtle forms of disrespect, the multiple suspensions in 7th and 8th grade, exclusions from parties and school events. I've often wondered if it was more about me being Baptist in a Catholic school than being black in a white world. The school wanted my parents to have me baptized Catholic, but they refused, even though doing so would have meant a 20% reduction in the yearly tuition. They knew that Lourdes was so much better academically than the local public schools, so they insisted that I tough it out. The breaking point came halfway through my 8th grade year. I played on my middle school football team, and I had proven myself as the top defensive back of the season, 17 interceptions in 10 games. Each year, the football team would have a banquet where all the players, parents, and the coaches hosted a dinner to honor the team at the end of the season. The kids who won awards were supposed to sit at the front and then walk up to the stage to be recognized. Since I had the most interceptions on the team, I was set to receive my trophy, Defensive Player of the Year. But a week before the banquet, I was informed by Sister Agnes that because I had been suspended from school before the football season had even started, I wouldn't be allowed to sit up front or receive an award on stage. I was disappointed, but I figured that it was fair. It was a rule, and everybody knew I won anyway. But on the night of the banquet, I saw my white friend, Ross Dempsey, sitting at the front, preparing to receive his trophy, even though we had gotten suspended together. That disinjustice infuriated me. I leaned over to mom and daddy and told them what was going on. Without a word, they looked at each other, and in the moment of rare but potent agreement, they stood up and we left. We drove home that night in silence. A few days later, over dinner, without looking up from his meal, daddy said, "We're done with that school." And that was that. As it should be, bro. As it should be. Like, as an adult, when I deal with racism, it's whatever. But, bro, as an adult, when I deal with racism, it's whatever. But, bro, when you start, like, imprinting that on kids, like, that's just evil. Those are the moments where you are making the world a worse place every time. And it happens every day. It particularly at schools. Like, the stuff they teach you that's harmful in schools is not in any books. It's the mentality of the teachers and the security guards and the principals and the lunch ladies. Like, that, y'all don't hear me. This summer was hot. Business was booming and cash was flowing, so Daddy-O treated himself to a Kodak Super 8 home movie camera and projector. This was dope as hell. It had one of those big rubber eyepieces and a little leather strap for your wrist so you didn't drop your whole summer's worth of money off your back patio. Had Daddy-O grown up in a different time or place, he definitely would have been an artist. When he was a teenager, one of the school teachers loaned him a camera, and he fell in love with photography. He ran all over North Philly, snapping photos, and later learned to develop them in a dark room. But when it started to consume all his time and attention, his parents and teachers reminded him that he needed to work and make money. Photography was an expensive hobby, so when he was sent to boarding school, they made him give the camera back. His heart was broken, but Daddy-O never lost his love for photography. His new Super 8 camera turned him into one of those dads, the kind who at birthday parties and barbecues will follow all the kids around, filming everything they did, making us smile, do tricks, or be funny. Because the camera didn't have sound, he encouraged us to wildly over-exaggerate our movements, Charlie Chaplin style, to communicate his narrative without words. Daddy-O let go behind the camera. When there was work to be done, he was all about order and discipline. But when his camera was rolling, he wanted to see me jumping around and being silly. I ate up the attention. You could not keep me out of the picture frame. Even when he was trying not to shoot me, I would inevitably photobomb. After we would shoot, Daddy-O would rush down into the basement. He threw a sheet up on the wall and carefully feed the delicate reels of film into the projector. Following a series of frustrating snags and misfires, the sheet would suddenly light up with us. A road trip here, a birthday party there. These were our family's highlights. Daddy-O would sometimes play the guitar too. A glass of Chivas Regal on the side table, a Territon 100 dangling out of his mouth, his eyes squinting from the dancing smoke. He'd pick the chords that Andy Williams, The Shadow of Your Smile, or attempt some intricate jazz riff that his workman's hands were just too battered to perfect. He'd pluck, strum, and even sing. It was always something romantic. Love songs seemed to put him in a good mood. My mom too. The music and home movies brought peace to the house. I think our home movies depicted Daddy-O's dream of a perfect, happy family. And by a strange alchemy, what was true on the screen had become true in the basement as well, as we all watched together. In every image, we were all smiling, laughing, having fun. There was no fear, no tension, no violence. For those brief moments, Daddy-O's life imitated his art, as we all smiled and laughed and sang along. Psychologists have written about how our relationship with our parents in childhood and early adolescence creates our map for understanding love in adulthood. When we interact with our parents as children, some behaviors and attitudes win us attention and affection, and other behaviors and attitudes cause us to feel abandoned, unsafe, and unloved. The behaviors and attitudes that win us affection often come to define what we understand as love. Daddy-O appreciated when I worked hard and performed his directed orders with intensity and precision. He applauded when I was disciplined and laying in perfect brick towards the construction of a perfect wall. My mom loved when I used my brain. She applauded the thinker within me. When my wit and intellect were most on display, my mom is my prototype. Patient, brilliant, formidable, nurturing. She prefer to do things together, but she's going to be fine with it without you. Mom can carry it off for a while if you need to take a break. With Gigi, there was something majestic and empowering about how she loved me. Whenever I performed for her, I felt like I was plunged into the force, like I couldn't lose. She was like the sun to me. If I could just make the world see me the way Gigi saw me when I played Fillings, then that was it. That was the mountaintop. The concepts of love and performance became fused in my mind. Love became something earned by saying and doing the right things. In my mind, great performances got you love, bad performances left you abandoned and alone. An exquisite performance secured affection, but if you sucked by your damn self. I performed to placate my father to quell his fouler moods. I performed to distract my family from the growing tensions and resentment that was consuming our home. I performed to get the kids in my neighborhood to like me. As such, I began to see happiness for myself and my loved ones as a function of my ability to perform. If I performed well, we would all be safe and happy. If my performance faltered, we were in trouble. Daddy-O was at his most loving either behind a camera or a projector. Therefore, I always wanted to be in front of his camera, and he always wanted me in front of it. It was one of the few times in my childhood where he and I were perfectly aligned. I loved being in my father's home movies. It brought me closer to him, and that deep craving for his love and approval undoubtedly played a role in my desire to perform on film later on in life. Throughout my life, I have been haunted by an agonizing sense that I am failing the woman I love. Over the years in my romantic relationships, I would always do too much, coddling, overprotecting, desperately trying to please them, even when they were totally fine. This insatiable desire to please manifested as an exhausting neediness. To me, love was a performance, so if you weren't clapping, I was failing. To succeed in love, the ones you care for must constantly applaud. Spoiler alert, this is not the way to have a healthy relationship. I think you're blaming yourself. To me, you seem to be projecting. This isn't something that you tell yourself. This is something that somebody else tells you. And I guarantee you he could have done the exact same actions, and if his response was thank you, he wouldn't feel like he had been doing so wrong in his approach to relationships and love. When I was 13 years old, Daddy-O hit my mom for the last time. She'd had enough. She went to work the next morning and didn't come home. She didn't go far, just a few blocks of Gigi's house. But the message was clear. She was done. This was the first of only 2 times in my life that I contemplated suicide. I thought about pills. I knew where a boy had lost his legs on train tracks. I had seen people cut their wrists in a bathtub on TV, but what kept ringing in my mind was a faint memory of hearing Gigi say that killing yourself was a sin. Daddy-O reverted to a full military protocols. He was now in absolute command. He was going to do it all. He woke up at 4 the next morning to prepare breakfast. He was determined to prove that he didn't need Mom. By 5:30, the plates were on the table. Half an apple, sunny side eggs, and a slice of scrapple. A pitcher of orange juice and a pitcher of milk. My mom never did pitchers. By 6, Ellen and I were sitting at the table. Harry knew he was supposed to be down by 6. I guess 6:04 was my brother's silent protest. Daddy-O let it go. He would never have ordinarily let it go. 6:40 would usually have meant no breakfast for Harry. The food had been sitting out for 30 minutes, so the eggs were cold and half the apple was turning brown. Ellen and I ate quietly. These eggs are hard, Harry said. Daddy-O seemed to not even hear him. He was washing the dishes. Start clean, stay clean was one of Daddy-O's maxims. He used it for cooking and at work. You clean up as you go along, not leaving one big mess for the end. Harry's nose turned up at the food. The apple's all brown, Harry said. Please, Harry, just leave him alone. And what's this mess, Harry said, poking at the scrapple with his finger. Without a word, Daddy-O snatched up Harry from the chair and carried him to the front door, opened it, and deposited Harry outside. He then handed Harry his book bag and slammed the door. Do you think that's where he got Uncle Phil throwing jazz outside from? Harry didn't come home that day after school. He went to Gigi's house and moved in with my mom. When Harry left, it was as painful for me as my mom leaving. I wanted to be with her too, but I was too scared to leave. It only solidified my deepest insecurity. I could no longer deny the truth. I was a coward. My mom lived at Gigi's for 3 years. We saw my mom every day. She would bring us lunch, and we would stop by Gigi's sometimes, spend the night. The houses were close enough that we maintained our outward proximity, but on the inside, our family was broken. I was amazed. Paul and Daddy-O got along perfectly. The idea that someone could be confronted by the Daddy-O ogre, stand in the storm of his rage and fury, and disarm him with nothing more than a look and a laugh, I had never experienced that kind of power. Paul's martial arts training allowed him to submit to Daddy-O's authority. He respected him, but he was not afraid of him because deep down inside, Paul knew that if he needed to, he could kill him. And Daddy-O knew that too. For the first time in my childhood, Paul made me feel safe in my own home. He was powerful. If Paul was around, no one would mess with me. Not the neighborhood kids, not the white boys from the school, not even Daddy-O. And just when I thought it was impossible for my cousin to get any cooler, he unlocked the world of hip-hop. Back then, hip-hop wasn't what it is now. There had been a couple of hits, but for the most part, it was still underground. There was no albums or singles, no radio play, no videos. You had to know somebody who knew somebody who could get you a cassette tape of one of the live performances exploding from the epicenter, New York City. People would literally go stand in the audience at a party and hold up a boombox over their heads to record the performers. That's how mixtapes were created. People physically going to a party and holding a big-ass radio up in the air for an hour, 2 hours, then making copies of the tapes and giving them to their friends. People in New York would cut a tape with some of their favorite hip-hop artists, make a copy, then take it to their friends in Boston, mail one to their brother in LA, or play one for their little cousin in Philly. These tapes got traded, sold, copied, and traded again. This hand-to-hand exchange across the country was what drove the rocket-fueled expansion of hip-hop. It was grassroots. It was viral before anyone knew what going viral was. It was straight from the street to the heart. Back in the 1970s, black communities would throw block parties. They'd shut down their block and a DJ, short for disc jockey, would bring out a turntable and a box of records and play on the street for everybody to dance. Given this was the 1970s, most of what they played was funk and disco music. The songs in both funk and disco always featured instrumental sections somewhere in the middle. The song would be jamming along and then it would begin to rise until it reached a soaring crescendo with every instrument at full blast and boom, nothing but the drummer. This became known as the break. Break beats were designed to have a little extra split out to them. The break was the time for performers like James Brown to show off their dance move, but as it turned out, the break became the hottest part of the song and always set the party on fire. Because everybody loved dancing to the break so much, one day at a block party in the Bronx, a guy named DJ Kool Herc came up with the idea to bring out 2 turntables and have 2 of the same record. That way he could switch back and forth between them, playing only the break and keeping it going indefinitely. 2 turntables in a mixer also meant that he could blast between James Brown and the Winstons and back to Brown, then to Sky and the Family Stone, from break to break to break to break, only playing the favorite 10 seconds of everybody's favorite records. This created a frenzied new style dance party and the modern DJing was born. Because the DJ now had 2 turntables in a mixer, another innovation emerged: scratching. Scratching was done by moving a record back and forth, creating a wild new sound in music. One of the records could be scratched while the other played the break. The record being scratched would then be released perfectly on beat, and then the process was flipped so that the break could continue for as long as the people wanted to hear it. And the only thing that was missing from the equation to make it hip-hop was rapping. DJs now had 2 turntables and twice as many records. The demands of the craft consumed more and more of their attention, preventing them from being able to interact with the crowd as much as they used to. So they started bringing their brother or one of their friends along to be on the mic to engage with the crowd. These masters of ceremony would talk to the audience, hype them up, brag about the DJ, and generally entertain the audience. Ladies, let me hear you. Who got $100 in their pocket? Where Brooklyn at? Eventually, the most creative MCs started to talk in rhymes to the rhythm of the break beats, a flavor imported from Jamaican immigrants known as rapping. The block parties began to blaze, especially when the rhymes were clever, funny, poetic, or best of all, when they shouted out your neighborhood. The equation was not complete. DJing plus MCing equals hip-hop, and the world was not ready. Paul's troublesome escapes to New York City had given him access to all the mixtapes. He knew people who were down with the crew called the Zulu Nation, an early collective of hardcore hip-hop enthusiasts based out of New York, New Jersey area. He could get me any tape: Grandmaster Flash and Melly Mel, The Furious Five, The Treacherous Three, Cool Mo D battling Busy B Starsky, and my all-time favorite, Grandmaster Cash and the Cold Crush Brothers. Grandmaster Cash was single-handedly, undeniably the greatest influencer in my hip-hop life. He was the prototype for the Fresh Prince. Damn. I thought it was his cousin. I just knew I was right about it. I feel like his cousin introducing him to hip hop is what, you feel me? I feel like that tied to, fuck it. I feel like I was right about that one. Forget it. I feel like I was right about that one. He was one of hip hop's first storytellers. Kaz was witty. He was clever. His verses took you on a journey. You'd be on the edge of your seat listening to him rap, always wonder what was going to happen next. And most of all, my dude knew how to land a punchline. I wanted to be just like Kaz. In fact, my first hit single, Girls Ain't Nothing But Trouble, was inspired by Wait. influenced by. Okay, basically, I studied every single line the Grandmaster Caz mixtape freestyle called Yvette, and then wrote my own version of his story. I guess why I connected with him so much was that I had similar experiences to what he described in Yvette, but it never dawned on me to write a rhyme about it. In a way, Caz validated and unleashed a creative part of me that I never thought anybody would care about. He made it okay to be me. It was a long time ago, but I never forget. I got caught in the bed with this girl Yvette. I was scared like hell, but I got away. That's why I'm here talking to you today. I was outside of my school shooting up the rock. Crowd of people gathered around listening to my box. It was me and the L, the A, and the AL, and the Al. And then I slipped away to make a phone call. Bro, I never heard this song before, and these rhymes, they're not that great. He put some lyrics to Yvette. I'm sure Grandmaster Caz was hyped when he read it. There's probably no need to point out the similarities, but to gild the proverbial lily, I always loved that Caz was on the basketball court when he makes the call to Yvette. So in the theme song for the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, I put my character on the basketball court too, a quiet homage to the legend. I'm not exactly sure when I became a rapper. Back then, hip-hop wasn't something we did. It was what we were. Hip-hop was not just our music. It was dance. It was fashion, street art, politics, social justice. It was everything. It was life. It was us. Outsiders didn't see it as a legitimate genre of music to pursue and perfect, but we weren't even thinking about it in those terms. It was something new, fresh, fun, and exciting that was growing around us and within us. None of us thought it was going to blow up and dominate the world like it does today. And if someone had asked, where do you think hip-hop will be in 40 years? I probably wouldn't have said, oh, it'll be one of the most impactful forms of music in the history of humankind. We simply loved what we were doing, so we kept doing it. I still remember the first rhyme I ever wrote. I was 12 years old. At the age of 1, I had just begun on my journey to the T.O.P. And at the age of 2, everybody knew that I was hellified, MC. At the age of 3, any sure shot could see I was bona fide lover at heart. I got an IQ of 142. Like my name, I'm a work of art. Will? I don't get it. Fortunately, I got better. With balls, tapes, and encouragement, I became obsessed. I was already incessant talker and performer, but now I was walking around all day quietly babbling and rapping to myself, constructing new rhymes, reciting my favorite verses, trying to freestyle on whatever was going on around me. I went out and bought one of those black and white speckled composition notebooks and started writing down my rhymes and practicing them in my room in the mirror. My fantasy-driven mind would splash all over those pages, sometimes even surprising me by what came out. My creative river was raging. Rapping was the most natural thing in the world to me, and from the cocoon of a bullied, awkward kid emerged a natural-born killer MC. Overbrook High School was located less than a mile away from Our Lady of Lourdes, but it may as well have been another planet. The environments could not have been more different. Whereas Lourdes bordered the wealthy white neighborhood of Lower Merion, Overbrook was the center of a section called Hilltop, which anchored the poorer black neighborhoods of West Philadelphia. Our Lady of Lourdes was a small, intimate Catholic school with only a few dozen kids per grade, most of them white. I had been one of only 3 or 4 black kids in the entire place, but Overbrook was nicknamed the Castle on the Hill. It was gigantic, an absolute monster of a structure. Built in 1924, back when they used real materials to build buildings, it spanned 2 square city blocks and loomed over the neighborhood like a stone fortress. You had to ascend a mountain of 30 stairs just to make it from the sidewalk to the front door. If you survived the climb, what you found inside was nearly 1,200 students, 99% of them black. Swarms of kids buzzed through the city block and hallway. At Lourdes, everyone knew who I was, but when I walked into Overbrook on my first day, I was completely anonymous. I was intimidated and terrified. As I look back on it with today's understanding, I was probably on the edge of a panic attack. My heart was racing, my hands were shaking, but by the time I had developed an infallible strategy for coping with my fear: performance. If I could get them laughing and smiling, then I would feel safe. I'm still not exactly sure why I did what I did on the first day. It was a reflex, some bizarre automatic defense mechanism, as though my emotional immune system had kicked in and took control of my mouth. I was talking before I knew what I was going to say, and thereby started my high school career with maybe the stupidest thing I had done in my entire life up until that point. Just before 8 o'clock, a couple hundred kids gathered in the sprawling cafeteria for orientation. We were the new kids, there to get acclimated, to get our class assignments, to be officially welcomed to Overbrook High School. As I entered the cafeteria, the mounting pressure of my anxiety finally became too much. I put my hands up in the air and shouted, excuse me, may I have everybody's attention, please? The room quieted. 200 students all turned and looked at me. He's here, I said, pointing to myself. Y'all can relax because he's here. You're welcome. Go ahead, back to what y'all doing. I'll be here if y'all need me. There was a strange silence. Clearly this was an educational first for most kids. A couple of them chuckled, and most just went back to doing what they had been doing before they were bizarrely interrupted. I'm not sure what response I had hoped for from the crowd, but the outburst had at least purged most of my anxiety and tension. As I ventured deeper into the room, I slipped past the dude who had clearly not been impressed by my announcement. Without looking up, he said, man, don't nobody give a fuck that you're here. Without missing a beat, I leaned down to him and said, hey, just give me 10 minutes. Your girl gonna care. Oh, the voices around us rang out. They were even a couple claps. The kid looked at me for a second and didn't say a word. He gave me this stiff chin nod. Not a nod for agreement, but a nod that, alright, so that's how it's gonna be. I moved victoriously thinking maybe this high school thing ain't gonna be that bad. At 8:31, orientation was complete and the students were all released into the Overbrook halls to juke and fumble and stumble around until we located our homeroom classes. My homeroom's 315, and as I was rounding the stairs between the second and first floors, I saw the dude from the lunchroom out the corner of my eye sneaking up behind me. Then there was a blue flash, a sharp pain in the right side of my head, and then nothing. The next thing I remember is the taste of blood, and then a clamor of voices. My top lip was swollen and my front teeth are loose. I have the worst headache I'd ever had. This guy had taken one of those old school combination locks, the kind that everybody uses for their lockers. He put the lock in the palm of his hand and the steel loop over his middle finger, creating a makeshift form of brass knuckles. As he passed, he cracked me on the right side of my head with the lock. I went down instantly. As I fell, I hit my mouth on the stairs, blood everywhere. Kids screaming, teachers running, everybody trying to figure out if I had died or not. The lights in the principal office are killing my eyes. I'm holding a towel over my mouth as Daddy-O walks in. Pretty soon the police are there, and I mumbled through my recollection, Daddy-O is furious. The police are talking to the principal about pressing charges. In my head, all I could think is, wait, everybody slow down. This is all happening too fast. I just wanted to hit pause and then rewind. I wanted to do over. I didn't want to be here. I didn't want any of this to be the truth. Come on, Daddy-O says, let's go. He stands me up. The hallways are empty now. Daddy-O feels like a lion that can't find anything to kill. We exit the side door. I'd only been at Overbrook for an hour and a half. It's weird to be out of a school in the middle of the day. The Sugar Bowl convenience store is across the street. I wanted a water ice and a pretzel. It just seemed like Daddy-O was in the mood, so I didn't ask. As we drove away, I saw the kid being led in handcuffs from his first day of high school and discarded into the back of a paddy wagon. He was later expelled, and I never knew his name. Is that I don't know if that's the worst of ways to go out. I think this has got to be less embarrassing than what you did at the Oscars. I think that I think what he did was something I would do, to be 100% honest. Is just, when you're like that, sometimes people press your buttons, you feel me? Sometimes it's like what he was saying about young men and their budding masculinity. Sometimes you just run into those situations, and I don't necessarily think that this should go down as like such a big embarrassment for you, or you feel me, a negative memory. Like, at the time I could see that it'll be negative, but now it's funny. Like, you feel me? It was the first day of high school and you made a joke on somebody and they whatever, you feel me? Like, night. The moonlight glitz off my swollen Vaseline-caked lips. The first moment of silence in a day of complete and utter insanity. As I lay on my bed, on my left side, I wonder, what the hell happened? How did I get here? Just then, Gigi came in to check on me. She changed out my ice pack, plumped up my pillow, and reset the bandage on my head. I gotta say, it's not too bad having a nurse for a grandmother. I told her the whole story. She didn't lecture or scold. She simply said, you know, if you stop talking so much, maybe you could see some of the hits coming. That was that type of advice is why I miss my grandma. Real easy. It was like 10 words, and that was great. Then she kissed me and went on her way. Yep, just like her grandma. I couldn't stop thinking about Gigi's words. She was right. I was always talking, always joking. I never shut up. I talked not because I had anything particularly important to say, but because I was afraid. It began to dawn on me that my overcompensation and fake bravado were really just another more insidious manifestation of the coward. My thoughts were swirling. My mind drifted to the time when Gigi found my first rap book. Like most young kids emulating their hip-hop idols, I had been writing verses, full-on curse words, and slick, slangy vulgarities. I had accidentally left my book on the kitchen table. Gigi found it and read it. She never said anything to me, but she wrote me a note on the inside front cover. Dear Willard, truly intelligent people do not have to use language like this to express themselves. God has blessed you with a gift of words. Be sure you're using your gift to uplift others. Please show the world that you're intelligent as we think you are. Love, Gigi. You know, it's crazy. My dad's about as old as Will Smith, and he said that his grandma told him the same thing as a child. He said that she basically used to tell him that intelligent people don't have to use curse words because they know other words, which is funny to me because I used to rap and I used to cuss a whole bunch, and it was just weird as a reflection, because the reality of the situation is I knew more words than most people who don't rap and cuss a lot. But, like, you feel me? That was always something that was just in my head that would not stop me from cussing. It doesn't stop me from cussing to this day. It does stop me from using, like, hateful and harmful language, because I just feel like I have other words to express myself. So if I'm not a hateful or a harmful person, then I should be able to express myself without using that particular language. But I think that it's just funny hearing that his grandma used to give him, like, you feel me, the same advice that my dad's grandma used to give him around the same time. Laying in my bed, I was overcome with shame. Had I used my words to uplift others? I thought about this kid sitting in a jail cell somewhere. What is his grandmother doing right now? He'd potentially thrown his whole life away. A demise maybe not caused, but certainly provoked by my words. I knew for certain I didn't want to be that kind of person. But my shame slowly began to give way to staggering realization of the power of my words. But the shame slowly began to give way to a staggering realization of the power of my words. I knew that I had unconsciously caused my whole day. I didn't know exactly how, but I knew for damn sure that I had done it. I had sensed for the first time that I wasn't weak. In fact, I was indefinitely powerful. I just had no control over it. My imagination was running wild with possibilities. God had indeed blessed me with the gift of words. And that night, I was getting my first glimpse of the power of those words to alter and shape my reality. And then I asked myself, if I had this much power, shouldn't I use it for good? Words can affect how people view themselves, how they treat each other, how they navigate the world. Words can build people up or they can tear them down. I decided that night that I wanted to use my words to empower others, to help rather than hurt. I never cursed again in my rhymes, and I got criticized and smashed for years for that choice, but there was no peer pressure that even came close to overriding DG's pressure. What counts as a cuss word? Because he used to say damn in his rhymes, and it was like, listening to rap, I know that, like, you feel me, everybody uses like way worse cuss words, and damn is like, it's like one of those barely cuss words. He used to use it in the Fresh Prince too. And it's just like, does that, like, I feel like you tried. He used to also say I'm a hell of a guy a lot, like, is hell a cuss word? You feel me? That was back when they used to, the context you use hell in depends on the cuss word, but like, in that context, hell is a cuss word. It's funny hearing the reasoning why he never used cuss words in his rap. Like, just say I didn't feel like cussing, or say, like, you feel me, I wanted a safe brand that I could span out for the next 40 years to build into something that, you know, I didn't think would be profitable if I had it completely tied to typical hip hop culture. I don't know what you could have said, but I just feel like this story doesn't make me feel like, oh, that's a cool reason why you didn't cuss. It's just like, okay, bro, everybody's parents told them not to cuss and told them why not to cuss. And they still cuss. So, like, if you have a reason why you don't cuss, it's not because your grandma told you not to. But hey, man, I'm not, like, I could be wrong. Those first moments of high school were a little rocky, but I was certainly no longer anonymous. And in the same way that the power of my words had almost destroyed me, I was now starting to see their power painting my dreams. By the middle of the school year, hip-hop had really started to bubble in Philly, and now everyone had their own Cousin Paul, somebody they knew in New York who could get them mixtapes. The success of Rapper's Delight by the Sugar Hill Gang was putting major dents into mainstream barriers. Everybody was listening to that song all the time. Walking the halls of Overbrook that year was like walking through a hip-hop battleground. Hip-hop may not have been on TV. It may not have been on the radio, but at Overbrook High School, everybody was rapping. Nobody knew it yet, but I had been writing rhymes every day for the past 8 months. I had pages and pages of different concepts and punchlines and stories. I started to keep a stash memorized and ready to go. I'll walk up on groups of kids rapping and join in, and I always slowly started to develop a reputation as a pretty good rapper. The new thing was freestyling. Somebody would beatbox with their mouth, and then the rapper would improvise in the moment about whatever was around them. Some kids' funny shoes, the test you failed in math class, the girl you liked, whatever. This was always my biggest strength. I had been cracking jokes my entire life, and all I had to do was make them rhyme, and people were flipping. The best beatboxer in the whole school was a guy named Clarence Holmes. Everybody called him Clay. Not only could he generate the most bass, but he could mimic the actual sounds of popular break beats. And on top of that, Clay could do sound effects. He could make a bird noise in the hallway that was so realistic, people would be turning around to see who let the bird in here. I soon realized that every time Clay beatboxed for me, he always made me sound better. I started seeking him out every day after class. I'd roll up and hit him with our standard greeting. Sup, C, you ready to rock? You know what it is, he'd say. Clay was always ready to rock. Always. So much so that we all started calling him Ready to Rock C. Pretty soon, we started as just casual freestyle sessions, rhyming and flowing and trying to one-up each other, morphed into what became known as battles. I would set up and do a verse. Then the other kid would try to one-up me. Maybe he'd make fun of my hair and my clothes. Then when his verse finished, I had to step back in and freestyle a response. The judge of who won was determined mainly by who got the biggest laugh or cheer from the crowd. If you won the crowd, you won the battle. I was invincible. 2 words. Scorched earth. What is that? Like, I feel like there's a cool phrase in there somewhere, and if it wasn't so contingent on the 2 words part, and you could put more words around scorched earth, maybe a subtle explanation, but a little footnote after it or some shit like that, I just feel like I would get it. I feel like I would get it more. Whatever though. There were some guys who were cleverer than me, who had tighter flows or better voices or more developed poetic sense, but nobody was as funny as me. Nobody could rock the crowd with a punchline the way I did. What nobody seemed to ever understand was that you can't beat funny. You could spit all the tough gangster shit you want. You could rip rhymes about all the money and women in the world, but if your pants are just a little bit too far above your shoes and somebody says, look at you, homie, pretending you all fly, looks like your shoes went to a party and your pants got high, and 40 people laugh, you're done. It's over. Rapping changed everything for me. For the first time in my life, I was popular. I was getting attention and respect. Ready Rock and I were from Winfield, but Overbrook was the hilltop. Many times in these battles, we'd be rapping for Winfield. So a lot of the same neighborhood guys who used to pick on me and make fun of me were now getting hyped when I showed up. I was making new friends. Girls were starting to feel me. Ready Rock and I became inseparable. The other reason I never lost a rap battle was because I had been raised in the house of Daddy-O, molded and chiseled by an unrelenting work ethic. I practiced incessantly. Unlike the other kids who were starting to smoke weed and cut class, I spent hours filling notebooks with rhymes every day. I'd stand in the mirror and practice my verses, making sure my face and my body language were perfectly matched to reinforce and punctuate the punchline. I was tightening my delivery and trying to deepen my tone. Every break between class and before and after school, I was always looking for some sucker who was slipping. I battle anybody in the lunchroom, in the parking lot, at the Tustin playground, or the Bieber schoolyard in class. I started having fun with my teachers rhyming answers back when they called on me. I'd rhyme to my parents. I answered the phone in rhymes. A lot of adults pretended they hated it, but I knew they loved it. The combination of hip-hop and humor made me untouchable. I had found my voice. I was choosing my words poetically and comedically. And now, for the first time, I was experiencing a surge of power over my own life. My teachers loved me. I'd be late for class and miss my homework or get caught being silly in the back of the room. They couldn't yell at me because they were laughing. I started noticing that I was never getting in trouble. One of my favorite teachers was Miss Brown. She taught Algebra 2, elementary functions, and trig. She had flawless chocolate skin and big, steady brown eyes. Her body was just under 5 feet tall, but she was 6'8" on the inside. She knew exactly what I was doing. By this point, I was at least a foot taller than her. And when I do something that she needed to check me for, she'd walk right up to my chest and say, come down here so I could talk to you. Was she flirting with you, Will? She was flirting with you. Learning is really easy when you can feel that your teachers love you. Ms. Brown began to jokingly call me Prince Charming. She'd sarcastically say things like, oh look, Prince Charming has graced us with his homework this Monday morning. How kind of him. The kids would laugh and I'd eat it up. As long as everybody's laughing, I'm good. Back in the 80s, the word fresh was the new hip-hop slang. Everybody was saying every other word, like fly in the 70s or dope in the 90s. In the 80s, if something was hot, you'd say, man, that's fresh. One day I came running to Miss Brown's class, literally only 45 seconds after the bell. And looking at her watch, she said, His Highness, the Prince, 2 minutes late. I quickly corrected her. Nah, Miss Brown, we both know I'm barely 30 seconds late. And if you don't mind, thenceforth and hitherto, do I demand to be known as the Fresh Prince. The classroom burst out laughing. The name stuck. In order to feel confident and secure, you need to have something to feel confident and secure about. We all want to feel good about ourselves, but many of us don't recognize how much work it actually takes. Internal power and confidence are born of insight and proficiency. When you understand something or you're good at something, you feel strong, and it makes you feel like you have something to offer. When you've adequately cultivated your unique skills and gifts, then you're excited about approaching and interacting with the world. And what I learned from Paul was that being good at something allows you to be calm in a storm. Knowing that you can handle whatever comes, there's a great Bruce Lee quote that resonates with me. One of Lee's students asked him, Master, you constantly speak to us of peace, yet every day you train us to fight. How do you reconcile those conflicting ideas? And Bruce Lee responded, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. Rapping didn't just win me the approval I desperately craved from my peers. It gave me a sense of power, but I knew it was fleeting. It demanded my constant attention and nurturing. I knew I was good, but I also knew that I had to work. It wasn't going to just come to me. I had to go get it. I kept seeing her in the hallways. I'd even had a dream about her, but we were from 2 different cliques. I was rapping now, so I was rolling with the cool kids, but she wore big-ass glasses, and her and all her friends were in the art program and lugged around those big-ass portfolio book bags. But Melanie Parker was beautiful. She noticed me soon after the unfortunate lock incident. She was a Mochiano flavored cutie. She had the sort of goofy, gorgeous genius thing, a beguiling mixture of insecurities and quirkiness surrounding a simmering core of artistic brilliance. We had been sniffing around each other for a few weeks, and I could tell she was far too much of a lady to speak first. She had gorgeous mahogany eyes and a springtime smile that I come to understand was painted to the top of hidden layers of sadness. Melanie was a broken angel, and from the moment I saw her, I wanted nothing more than to take care of her. So I pressed up to her. What's up, cutie? I'm the prince, I said. She smiled politely and said, what does your mother call you? I was thinking, damn, my mother calls me my government name. Well, she calls me Willard, I said, but you could call me Willard, she interrupted. Nice to meet you, Willard. I'm Melanie. She never called me Will. She never called me Prince. She called me asshole once or twice, but to this day, she calls me Willard. She wanted the dick, bro. She wanted the dick. If you have a nickname and she calls you by your actual name, then she wants the dick, bro. Look at that big ass art bag, I said. May I carry it for you to your next class? Melanie paused. I sensed that she already liked me, but she felt like she had to make it difficult. She handed me the bag without a word and walked off to class. I followed her, already completely in love. When we reached our classroom, I handed her the bag. I think you should let me carry it home for you too this afternoon, I said. You should rest your art muscles. I would walk Melanie home from Overbrook every day. She took easily to wonder and awe. Everything was interesting to her. She was one of those people who could stop and look at a tree for 10 minutes. Melanie lived in the opposite direction from Woodcrest, so I walked 10 minutes to her house carrying her big-ass portfolio all the way, then 20 minutes back home. Thinking about those eyes all the way home. Melanie was born and raised in Minneapolis. Her household was filled with violence to a tragic extreme. Her mother ended up killing her father and went to prison for it. Her mother incarcerated. Melanie moved to Philly to live with her aunt, a strict Muslim who opened her home to her niece, but who maintained very strong opinions about how a teenage girl should behave. I never quite got the whole story, but on one occasion, Melanie and her aunt had a very serious disagreement about something, which escalated to the point that her aunt threw Melanie out the house. Legally, without a place to stay, Melanie could have been sent back to Minneapolis and placed in foster care. I was panic stricken. Told my mom the whole story and begged her to let Melanie stay with us. Mom, it'll only be for a little while, I said. I'll get a job, do whatever I have to get a bunch of money, and me and Melanie will get our own place. I love her, Mommy. Please, can she stay with us till I can figure it out? My mom's eyes welled, her tears a complex emotional mixture. On one hand, this was exactly the kind of son she'd hoped to raise, loving, responsible, committed, but on the other hand, she knew from personal experience the fragile realities of young love. Oh, hell no, Daddy-o said. Carolyn, you know exactly what they're gonna be doing. But I had already promised my mother no sex. Melanie would stay in the basement. I would sleep in my room 2 floors up. It was only temporary. Daddy-o protested, but my mom won this one. Wait, so she moved in? Cause I was gonna wait till the end of the story to go into depth about how, like, you feel me, his mom taught him the wrong lesson here. On one hand, this was exactly the kind of son she had hoped to raise, loving, responsible, committed, but on the other hand, she knew from personal experience how fragile young love could be. Like, that's it right there. Like, she taught him in that exact moment to put being a good man or the type of man that your mother wanted to raise above common sense and logic. That's what she just taught him in that moment. Cause realistically speaking, you're in school. That has nothing to do with you. You shouldn't be involved in that. No matter how you feel about this woman, where y'all are, where you are in life, where she is in life, what's going on, the circumstances, context, you should no way be involved in that. And you should just have to deal with the heartbreak of her life taking her in a direction that might separate the two of y'all. And I feel like that's exactly what Will Smith needs to understand now in life. But he was taught this poor lesson as a child, and it meant so much to him that he had to put it in his book here, which, I mean, I guess his mom letting a shorty that he loves move in with him in childhood is worth mentioning. But, like, it's just, she taught him the wrong lesson here, and it's coming back to bite him. Before I reveal what happened, I'd like to preface my remarks by making it unequivocally clear that I was deeply and totally in love with Melanie Parker. We were going to be married. We were going to have 4 beautiful mochaccino-flavored children, and our union would live alongside the epic tales of romance, Romeo and Juliet, Tristan and Isolde, Tupac and Janet, even Eddie and Hallie and Boomerang. Okay, I'm sorry. I have a lot to say about that sentence. First things first. That's a lot, bro. Like, as a small child, if you, okay, I'm gonna talk about the premise of the point after I'm done. First things first, I don't know who Tristan and Isolde is. I don't know who that is. I apologize. Tupac and Janet. Wait, so you're acknowledging that Tupac wanted another bitch. You know Tupac wanted another shorty. You know that Janet was curving the bitch that your bitch is curving you to try to, like, what? Let me try to put sensible words to my thoughts real quick. So, you've gone your whole life playing second fiddle to Tupac in the eyes of your wife. And this is knowing that before he died, he was interested in another shorty who did not claim him. Like, yeah, I watched Janet's documentary, so I understand the romance between her and Tupac and everything that comes from, what was the name of that movie? It wasn't a good movie. Poetic Justice. It wasn't a good movie, but, like, it had 2 good actors in it. It like so like you're aware that Tupac was focused on some whole other for whatever reason, because he knew your wife so well, yet for some reason still wanted Janet. I wonder why. But you knew this so much so that you put it in the book. He was one of the examples of romance. He was right up there along with Romeo and Juliet to you. Yet at no point did you find the need to tell your wife, like, hey, Juliet, that's not your Romeo. Eddie and Hallie and Boomerang was a great touch. That's my second favorite movie all time. I'm gonna make a list of my favorite movies one of these days and explain why they're the greatest movies ever. And this is number 2 on the list. Before I am less than 3 months into our star-crossed love affair, my mom should have been asleep, but tragically decided she wanted a cup of coffee. And wearing slippers far too quiet to defend her delicate sensibilities, she approached the threshold of the family kitchen. Still innocent, she flipped the light switch, as she had done tens of thousands of times before. But this time, her eyes landed upon her eldest son and his girlfriend, deep in the throes of reckless lovemaking. As a teenager, outside of physical injury, you cannot feel worse than having your mother catch you and your girlfriend doggy style on the kitchen floor. Ooh! Alicia, you feel me? Alicia, you feel me? A little bit. I feel you. Oh, Willard. Mom growled, slapping the lights off. Alicia had enough respect to cut the lights off, bro. Stomping furiously up the stairs, the slamming of her bedroom door functioned as a disastrous exclamation point. Now she wants to make noise. By the grace of God, those few days of Woodcrest allowed Melanie's aunt to calm down and let her move back in. I was only 16, but I was all in. I was determined more than ever to get us our own place, so Melanie and I could build a life together. Oh, Will smacking the cheeks. Okay. Let me come piggyback on the original thought that I had, because he's proven my point. If you don't notice, he came to his mother with this romantic love story, and his mother was like, oh my God, that's exactly the type of man that I want to raise. And it's not rational, the story, it's not rational, the context. This is a bad, you feel me, situation, but still I'm gonna let him embark on this because of the way that he feels about this woman. And what did his dad say? He gonna be boning. He's going to be boning shorty. He's going to be smashing that thing, cause obviously. But his mom decided to go against the logic of reality in the real world and be like, oh, no. I'm going to bring my 16-year-old son's girlfriend in the house, and he's not going to doggy style it where we eat breakfast. Cause that makes sense. If my mom brought my girlfriend, and I didn't have a girlfriend when I was 16, but like any of the shorties that I was dealing with when I was 16 and my mom brought them to stay with us, I'd have been waxing that consistently. And everything about the real world tells you how that situation should have been handled. But you learned the wrong lesson. I had gotten my driver's permit just before my 16th birthday. Ready Rock and I loved to drive around West Philly after school every day looking for people to battle. They were pretty easy to find back then. It'd be a bunch of dudes standing on the corner in a circle, one of them with their hands cupped around their mouth, bopping their head back and forth, the universal human beatboxing posture. We pulled the car over, step out, strike the b-boy stance, and it was on. It didn't take but a minute for me to start schooling fools. I'm dropping punchlines, people waving and screaming, oh shit, you hear what he said? The smart guys just quit when they realized I won the crowd. Because once the crowd is against you, anything you say just makes you look stupider. But some suckers didn't. They try to keep going, and then 2 words: scorched earth. Well, if for some reason you ever find yourself watching this video at this particular moment, can you explain that to me? Like, can you break it down for me? Exactly why you chose to use those specific words. I just want to know. If you don't want to, I still respect you. By my junior year, I developed a reputation around West Philly. I joined a crew of slightly older guys. We called ourselves the Hypnotic MCs. The design of the group was based on Grandmaster Caz and the Cold Crush Brothers. We had a DJ and four MCs, DJ Groove on the tables, Jamie Fresh, Shiki D, my friend Mark Forrest, aka the Lord Supreme, and me, the Fresh Prince. Ready Rock would pop in and out, but he wasn't really feeling those dudes. I took my role in the Hypnotic MCs very seriously. I attacked it with the discipline Daddy-O had instilled in me, but back then I hadn't learned yet that most people didn't have the same work ethic as me. I wanted to rehearse every day on a specific schedule. They were looking at it more casually. Sometimes they'd show up late to rehearsal, other times not at all. I wanted us to perform at other block parties and our pool money to buy equipment, pass out flyers to advertise ourselves, create our own cassettes. Because I was the youngest, they always laughed at me and kind of dismissed my ideas. I did finally convince everybody to put up $200 a piece so we could purchase a brand new SP12 sampling beatbox. I dug in for a few weeks at the Ice House and came up with my share. We now had a beatbox, 4 microphones, 2 turntables, and all the records we'd ever need. Because Groove was the DJ, we agreed to keep all the equipment at his house. We did a handful of really good shows together over about 6-month period, but mostly the equipment just sat there in Groove's basement unused. I was getting frustrated. Nobody wanted to grind and go get it. My work ethic and constant pushing slowly drove a wedge between me and the group. They resented me for always bugging them and ruining what to them was just supposed to be a fun hobby. I resented them for not putting in the effort to make this thing as good as it could possibly be. I remember being in rehearsals with them and finding myself barking out Daddy-O's axiom, 99% is the same as 0. We started having arguments and fights over everything, over lines, over which break beats went best, with what harmony, over who would take which verse. Every decision became mature. Knowing what I know now, I could see that there was no way it could have worked. But back then, my mind was that everything could be fixed. But finally, after months of no progress on recording anything, I went to Groove's house and told the guys that I was out. To them, I was the obnoxious kid who was killing everybody's vibe anyway. They sort of shrugged and laughed between themselves and threw my deuces. So I grabbed my mic and my headphones, and in the honor of fairness, I offered to buy the whatever from them. I offered to buy the SP12 back from them. It's not for sale, Groove said. There was a new coldness in his voice. Come on, man, y'all not even using that thing. I said, my dad would help me with the cash. They just ignored me and kept talking amongst themselves. It wasn't about the SCP-12. It wasn't even about the resentment. It was about power. They were disrespecting me because they could. They knew I couldn't do anything. All right, fine, I said. Just give me my $200 and y'all can keep it. They all kind of smirked at one another, and Groove said, nope. No argument. Nobody raised their voice. Just no after no. Outwardly, I stayed cool, but a fury was beginning to churn inside me. I had suffered bullying and abuse in my home and all through my childhood, and I was sick of that shit. Okay, I said calmly, I'll see y'all later. But as I started to leave, I realized that the SP-12 was sitting right there. So I walked over to it, I paused, and I snatched it up, violently ripping the cables from the wall, held it high over my head with the knobs facing down, and crashed. I slammed it onto the concrete basement floor. That thing disintegrated. The knobs, plastic transistors spraying everywhere. What the fuck are you doing? Groove screamed. And then I hauled ass up the basement stairs and out into the street. They were right onto me in the beginning, but I was the young one. Back in the day, how I was running was known as booking. I put my head down and didn't look back for 8 blocks. When I finally slowed down, there was no one behind me. I was on my own now. All of the windows were broken out of Daddy's brand new Chevy van. The radio and all his tools were gone. Paul had the van when it happened, and he was almost in tears, apologizing to Daddy-O. Daddy-O was trying to calm him down. That shit happens, man. That's why we have insurance, Daddy-O said. But something about Paul's inner code made this unforgivable. He felt like the van was in his possession, and he had been entrusted with it. I had never seen him like this. Paul felt like he had somehow failed and dishonored Daddy-O. Daddy-O could see that thing rising up in Paul, that thing that led him being in West Philly in the first place. Hey, Paul, look at me, Daddy-O said. You know how many times niggas have broken and stole my shit? I know exactly who did it, Uncle Will, Paul said. Fuck them niggas, Paul, Daddy-O said. We got too much shit to do. Leave it alone. But Paul couldn't let it go. He was messing with this girl named Shelly who used to mess with this old head named Black ran Winfield. He was always on the corner in front of Mr. Bryant's store with 7 or 8 of his friends. Black dude was about 6'4" and always had his shirt off. He didn't give a fuck. He would smoke weed outside in the daytime. Paul walked straight into the middle of the crowd right at the Black. Did you touch my uncle's van? Paul said. Everybody in the corner laughed. Yeah, I did it. What you gonna do about it? Bloop! Within a couple seconds, Black's nose was broken, but he didn't know yet. He wouldn't find out until later when he regained consciousness. I had never seen a fight like this except in movies. Paul beat up everybody. Every dude on the corner either bleeding, running away, or asleep. Paul didn't come home that night or the next. He had disobeyed Daddy-O. I guess that was too much for him to bear. It would be 35 years before I saw him again. Wait, so you were 16? He was 16, 35 years, puts him at 51. He's 53 now. This book came out last year. So you just recently saw him again. I'm guessing is what I'm supposed to be getting in here. That's cool. I wonder how he felt seeing that you basically stole his whole image. You feel me? You pulled the pliers on him and used his whole persona for your brand. Like, I wonder how he felt watching The Fresh Prince or watching you blow up as a rapper. You never having contacted him. I'm joking, making it seem like he didn't reach out. I don't know the situation, but that was dope. That was the end of chapter 4. I guess that's that's the story of how he became the Fresh Prince. It makes chapter 3 a little bit more like, okay, I'm more into it now that I see, you feel me, him as more of an older person with these characteristics that made him the Fresh Prince. Cause I wasn't feeling 12-year-old Will like that for real, no homo, but this is dope. I think I should just read chapter 5 too, right? Yeah, I'm gonna just, you feel me? I'm gonna just knock out another chapter real quick. Yeah. So chapter 5, it's called Hope. My mom and Harry moved back into Woodcrest. My family wasn't one that talked about things. I was never privy to what she and Daddy-O had decided. I didn't ask. They didn't tell. But whatever it was, he never put his hands on her again. It was midway through my senior year. I had just gotten my SAT scores, low 1200s. This was far from a perfect score, but for a black kid from an inner city school in Philadelphia, those numbers were more than good enough to get me really good options for college. My mom was ecstatic. She was dancing around the house, calling all her friends at Carnegie Mellon and MIT. You would have thought she was going back to college. My strong subjects were math and science. By 1986, more and more schools were beginning to offer computer science and engineering courses. My mom set up a war room. She had a map of the United States. She was cross-referencing engineering schools with cities and states where we had family members, cost of living with distance from Philadelphia. With that information at hand, she narrowed down my options to her top 5 or 6 schools, organized in order of most likely to least likely acceptance. She then filled out all the applications, handled all the housing logistics, and weighed all the travel and financial aid issues. At the time, she worked for the school board of Philadelphia, so when it came to education, her organization and execution made even Daddy applaud. We had family friends in Wisconsin, and suddenly mom decided we were going to take a quick family trip to see them. The patriarch, Walter McCollum, we called him Uncle Whatchamacallit, was tight with the administration office of the University College of Engineering. She had already gotten my sister Pam into Hampton University, and I was up next. Her wildest dreams as a parent were coming true. All their kids were going to college. My mom was the commander in charge of the Will Getting into College mission. All of a sudden, she was very comfortable with the idea that if 2 people are in charge, everybody dies. It was Friday night, and my girl Judy Stewart was having her birthday party up the block. I met with Ready Rock after school. "You going to Judy's party tonight?" he said. "Nah, man, she played me. I DJ'd her party for the last 2 years, and she got somebody else and didn't even tell me." Well, she didn't just get somebody else, man. She got Jazzy Jeff. Word, I've been hearing about him, but I never saw him cut. "Yeah, man, he's ill," Reddy said. "He's from Southwest, though, and he's going to be in our hood. We going to stand for that?" Ready Rock always knew how to gas me up for a battle. Not that I needed much fuel. "Yo, what's his rapper's name?" I said. "MC Ice. He can't touch you, though. Nobody can touch me." Ready Rock loved when I talk dirty like that. He gave me a pound. My mom was training with battle rhymes, organizing themselves for tonight's slaughter. "You know what? We're going to hit the party tonight and smash these fools," I said. "We're going to rep Winfield." "Bet," he said. "Ready Rock seeing the Fresh Prince versus Jazzy Jeff and MC Ice. I'll meet you there at 8. I bet. Later." Jeffrey Allen Towns grew up on Rodman Street in Southwest Philly, about 4 or 5 miles from Winfield. Jeff came from a musical family. His father used to MC for the jazz legend, Count Basie. His older brothers played in funk and fusion bands, and his sisters are always singing Motown tunes. He was the baby of the family and was a musical sponge, absorbing and processing all of the incredible talent that was happening around him. At the age of 15, Jeff was diagnosed with cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. After various painful and difficult treatments, he managed to beat the illness, but his mother became understandably overprotective, and Jeff found himself spending his days in the family basement, surrounded by 10,000 of his father's and brothers' jazz, funk, and blues records. Jeff would spend all day digging through them, listening to everything from John Coltrane and Charlie Mingus to Stevie Wonder and James Brown, noting the different styles, the musicianship, the instrumentation. When he was 10, Jeff had begun DJing. His encyclopedic knowledge made him a musical marvel. Everyone called him Jazz because of his ability to seamlessly blend complex jazz tunes with modern funk, disco, or hip-hop rhythms. Eventually, that got extended to Jazzy Jeff. A lot of you young guns might not know this, but back in the day, DJs were actually more famous than MCs. Rapping was still pretty rudimentary. We hadn't developed the rhythmic or linguistic ingenuity that we have today. Instead, DJing was the innovative and exciting center of attention. It's hard to explain to people who aren't familiar with old school cutting, but Jeff's ability to scratch out rhythms and blend sounds was, and still is for the most part, unparalleled. He pioneered techniques and styled in those Philly basement parties as a teenager that are still used by thousands of DJs all over the world today. He could manipulate records in ways that no one has seen or heard before. He could bend keys and time signatures and alter sounds, one of which I later named the Transformer Scratch because it reminded me of the sound effect from the Transformers cartoon. He could make the vocal lines of 2 records talk back and forth to each other, creating conversations from 2 completely different songs. But I could go on and on, but I'll stop and just say there's a reason why many, including myself, consider Jeff to be the GOAT of hip-hop DJing. Even today, over 30 years later, he's revered by DJing experts as one of the best in the world. The point is, I know I'm the big famous movie guy, but back in the 80s, Jazzy Jeff was the star. It was me backing him up. The night at Judy's, I showed up early. I made my entrance in their basement, 2-tone Lee jeans, black on the back, white on the front, with Fresh Prince down the left leg and red letters and a matching 2-tone Lee jacket. I had taken the Lee patch off the waistband of the pants and had it attached to the silver rope chain around my neck. I was almost too fly for this party. As I stepped into the room, my mind flashed to the last time I had been in Judy's basement. The harrowing events documented in my first single, Girls Ain't Nothing But Trouble, actually happened right here. I was with one of Judy's girlfriends in the basement one night when Judy's father woke up around 2 a.m. to an unmistakable sound of exquisite lovemaking. My sound's not hers. From the top floor, I heard him bellowing and tearing down the stairs. "Who the fuck is in my house?" I bottled up and scrambled naked through the narrow back hall, snatching the open door to the rear driveway, which to my horror had since disappeared under 12-inch inches of snow. It was 31 degrees and I had a choice to make. Where is he? Where is he? Judy's father roared. Decision made. I ran full city block, butt naked, back to my house in the snow. I was outside for over 10 minutes making snowballs, trying to hit Harry's bedroom window. Finally, the window goes up and Harry looks down. I had not heard my brother laugh harder before or since. It also happens that Judy's basement was where I met Jeff for the first time. Whatever magic juju Judy had going on in the basement in the mid-'80s, apparently Jeff and I owe our careers to it. Thanks, Judy. When I arrived, Jeff was still setting up. Judy introduced us. What up, man? I'm Jazzy, said. Prince, I said, pointing to my legs. I was thinking, this is Jazzy Jeff? He was wearing those big-ass glasses and he didn't have his name on his clothes anywhere. How was anybody supposed to know he was Jazzy Jeff? There was a band-aid around the middle scratch finger on his left hand. Apparently, he'd been scratching so much that the top knuckle on his finger now had a bend in it. Everybody was raving about this dude, but I was thoroughly unimpressed. If this Jake is the best DJ in the city, I'm sad for Philly. A lot of famous DJs back in the days were flashy, doing backflips and jumping over their turntables and all of that. Jeff was quite skinny, soft-spoken, and looked more like a science nerd than a samurai on the wheels of steel. I sat down to chill while Jeff continued to set up. It's always good to show up early before a battle so you can clock your material. I was plotting all the punchlines I was going to kick about his glasses, his band-aids, but I was really going to be battling Ice. A few minutes go by and I say, yo, Jazz, where's Ice? Jeff didn't even look up. I could tell this was a sore subject. Good question. I called him like 5 times. He never hit me back. Back then, there were no cell phones. You couldn't get in touch with people like today. Judy's guests were arriving now, but there was no sign of Ready Rock. The party was starting. I could see that Judy was getting nervous, and I could see that Jeff wasn't feeling too great either. My pleaser kicked in full steam. Hey, I'll rock with you till Ice gets here if you want, I said. Jeff relieved said, oh, that'd be dope. Thanks. I hate having to talk on the mic. I got you, I said. There's nothing I enjoy more than talking on the mic. We both laughed. Judy squealed and clapped her hands. There are rare moments as an artist that you can't qualify or measure. As much as you try, you could rarely reproduce them and it's nearly impossible to describe them. But every artist knows what I'm talking about. Those moments of divine inspiration where creativity flows out of you so brilliantly and effortlessly that somehow you're better than you've ever been before. That night with Jeff was the first time I ever tasted it. The place that athletes call the zone. It felt like we already existed as a group and we had just had to catch up to ourselves. Natural, comfortable home. Jeff could sense my rhyme style. He already knew when my jokes were coming, when to drop the track out so people could clearly hear the punchline, and I could tell by which hand he was using what type of scratch was coming. He preferred different scratches with his left hand than with his right. Sensing this, I could draw the audience's attention to which scratch was coming by which hand he was transitioning to. He was choosing the tracks and adjusting the tempos based on what he felt best accentuated the narrative structure of the flow of my rhymes, and just as the music crescendoed, Will likes the word crescendoed. And just as the music crescendoed, I'd throw down the dagger of a line and Jeff would just drop the beat into the funkiest, hottest party rock and shit these Philly kids ever seen in their lives. That night was crazy. When the party was over, me and Jeff stood out in the driveway catching our breath and cooling off. We were still hyped. Yo, that Truck Turner Echo thing you did was a blaze, I said. Your flow sits perfectly locked in the chick bass line, Jeff responded. Next time we'll use the bounce, rock, skate, roll, and then transition to chick. Word. Ideas poured out of us like a fire hose. Creativity ricocheted back and forth between us. Everything he said set off 3 ideas in my mind, and my responses had him holding his head and walking around in circles. We never really talked about it, never really made it official, but that wild November night in Judy Stewart's basement, he became my DJ and I became his rapper. From then on, we were DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, just like 2 kids from West Philly, partners, friends, brothers, and we still are today. Over the next couple of months, me and Jeff dug in hard. We practiced every day, performed every weekend. He lived in his mother's basement. It was his sanctuary, his magic workshop. When you entered it, you felt like you were getting a sneak peek behind the curtain of the wizard. Jeff was the first friend I'd ever had who plain and simple outworked me. I think it would be a misrepresentation to say he practiced a lot. It wasn't that he was practicing. It was that he didn't do anything else. You never catch Jeff in the kitchen or watching TV. You wouldn't show up to his house and see him walking up the front steps coming back from the store. He didn't go to the store. I guess wizards don't do their own shopping. Jeff was standing in front of his turntables 14 to 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It's literally the only image I could conjure of Jeff in his childhood home. Jeff was a mad scientist and he loved technology. He was always waiting for a new gadget to arrive in the mail that you could only get from some 70, 80-year-old guitar builder of questionable history in Vienna. He got a Tascam 4-track recorder, and he was experimenting with creating his own records. He now had a mini studio. Jeff is 3 years older than me, so he had already graduated, but I had to still go to school and work the Ice House. So by the time I go to rehearsal around 4 p.m., Jeff had already put in 10 hours of work. He'd give me 2 tracks to write to. I'd show up the next day with wondering, and he'd hand me 6 more tracks. This went on for the first few months of our partnership. DJ Jazzy Jeff was the hip-hop Terminator. He didn't eat. He didn't sleep. He absolutely, positively would not stop until you were dead. I tried to keep up. I would stay as late as I could until mom or daddy would call me asking if I knew what time it was. Those early months in Jeff's basement were among the most creative times I've ever experienced. Everything was cutting edge. Everything was hot. It was experimental and inspiring. I never wanted to leave. We were seeking our sound, but we found ourselves. I was homophobic last video. I'm not going to do it twice. One night we were rehearsing in Jeff's basement, and some random dude wearing a Lacoste polo shirt, tan khakis with razor crease, and Adidas shell toe crawled through the basement window. He calmly went and took a seat in what clearly he thought of as his corner. The music was playing, and Jeff and I were deeply engaged in our artistic banter, so I guess he didn't want to interrupt us. Jeff didn't react to his presence at all. This went on for a few minutes until I tried to break the awkwardness that obviously only I was feeling. Hey man, you gotta watch wearing those shoes with them pants. Khakis touch shell tops. They could blow your ankles up. I was just trying to break the ice, but the dude looked at me and perceived the challenge and said, oh, is that what we doing? We busting? Because we get started with those car door ears of yours. Nah, homie. I'm just messing with you. I'm Will. They call me Fresh Prince. Jeff finally popped out of his nutty professor trance and snapped his headphones off. Oh damn, what up, JL? Jeff said. When did you get here? James Lassiter was Jeff's best friend from childhood. JL grew up one block over on Hazel Avenue. When Jeff was sick as a child, his mother wouldn't allow him to get off the front porch, so JL would come over and sit for hours and hours with Jeff, keeping him company. This routine continued long after Jeff's recovery and well into their adult lives. JL was a serious cat. When I met him, he was putting himself through Temple Law School. He was studying during the day and working at the University of Pennsylvania Hospital at night. He would stop at Jeff's house for the last 2 hours of the day, part habit, part to unwind, part front seat to the evolution of the greatest DJ who ever lived. Our rise in the Philly hip-hop scene was nuclear. We'd done every show we could: block parties, school dances, proms, basement parties, birthdays, fundraisers, and church parking lots. You name it, we did it. We'd established the rep as fun, creative, captivating party rockers. Eventually, in early 1986, we scored our first real gig at a major venue, the famous Wynn Ballroom. Wynn was short for Winfield, my hood, my people, with my new DJ, and we smashed it. We were the hottest hip-hop duo in these Philly streets. But our big break came September 1986 when Jeff was invited to compete in the new music seminar Battle for World Supremacy. The Battle for World Supremacy was an old-school DJ and MC battle competition held annually in New York City. All of the legends of hip-hop had performed and competed in it. Grandmaster Flash, Busy Bee, Mantronix, Melly Mel, and so on. It was like the Olympics of early 80s hip-hop. Local radio DJ Lady B is an iconic pioneer of Philly hip-hop. She was playing rap music before anybody in the city, back when it was only on What AM radio. She called Dave Funkin' Klein, who was one of the event coordinators, and told him that she had a DJ in Philly who was changing the game. Lady B pressed Funkin' Klein to put Jeff in the competition. Even though it was just 2 hours away by car, the drive felt like a pilgrimage. New York City was the mecca of hip-hop. I had never been to New York. To me, the idea that music could be my passport to new worlds excited and inspired me. Here I was, right now, walking through New York City, headed to the coolest event on the planet, and all because of rap music. The battle was being held in the Grand Ballroom at the Marriott Marquis in Times Square. We rolled up 10 deep, full swag, red Phillies baseball caps filled the room. We were intimidated and in awe, but you couldn't tell from all the noise we were making. Philly was not officially in the building. Jeff approached the signing table. I was standing behind him, arms crossed, chin high, b-boy stance on swole. Melly Mel walks by to my left, entering the ballroom. My b-boy stance got a little less swole. And then Grandmaster Flash entered right behind him. For comfort, I put my arms on my side, and then I heard a sound over my shoulder. That outburst you hear when old friends haven't seen each other for a while. I vaguely recognized one of the voices. Where do I know that voice from? And then it hit me. I had never seen him in person before, but I knew it was him. He wasn't rocking a b-boy stance, no flashy clothes, no entourage, but the crowd still parted when he walked through. The undisputed favorite for the MC competition, Grandmaster Kaz. As he passed, it took everything in me not to squeal, I love you, Kaz! Fortunately, he passed quickly and I didn't play myself, but I'm not sure how much longer I could have held out. Jeff finished signing in. I put my hands in my pockets and went quickly to find a seat. This nigga's funny. Will Smith is funny. Like, that was grade A comedy in those last two paragraphs. There were two sections of the Battle for World Supremacy, the MC competition and the DJ competition, 8 competitors in each, 3 elimination rounds, last man standing wins. The battle was set up so that each competitor had 3 30-second slots in each round to do their thing. They'd go back and forth with their routines, and at the end, the judges would score them, partially based on their techniques and overall performance, but also on the reaction of the crowd. The MCs were up first, and it wasn't even a fair fight. Round after round, rapper after rapper fell to the wit and charisma of my idol. Grandmaster Kaz was crowned the world supreme MC, and I could hold out no longer. I love you, Kaz! The DJs were up next. Back in the day, this was the battle people really came to see. As a newcomer of the first round, Jeff was paired against DJ Cheese, the previous year's champion. Most DJs had worked out 2 or 4 routines and repeated them throughout the competition, but Jeff had spent the previous week preparing 9 separate 30-second routines. He realized that if there were 3 rounds, each round having 3 slots, that he'd be able to go through the whole tournament without ever repeating a single routine. But he took it even further. Each routine was timed perfectly to end in 30 seconds. So whereas other DJs were looking sloppy, getting cut off by the buzzer, or they had a 20-second intro and never really got their the routine started. Jeff's perfectly timed routines had punchlines right at 29 seconds. The effect was that Jeff's buzzer became a signal to the crowd to erupt. The first round is set to begin. Jeff walks across the stage, maybe a little overeager, just a bit too happy to be there, and extends a hand of greeting to DJ Cheese. Cheese looks Jeff up and down and flags him, refuses to shake his hand. As Jeff returns to his DJ setup, his cheerful demeanor is gone, and his eyes have turned icy. If Cheese would have known what was coming, he would have just shaken Jeff's hand, or better yet, tried to break it off. Cheese was up first. He came out strong, but Jeff fired back with one of Philly's favorites, a tricky rhythm scratch. People were looking at one another and murmuring, not quite sure what they had just seen. DJ Cheese is eyeballing Jeff, sensing that this is just the beginning. Nobody had ever seen cutting like this. The crowd was inching up to the edges of their seats. DJ Cheese unleashed his second routine and once again nailed it. The crowd cheers, big scores from all the judges. Then the audience settles down to see what other artillery the Philly kid has brought with them. And with no announcement and no fanfare, Jeff introduces the world to his Transformer scratch. In 1986, that was the illest thing anybody had ever heard, and that was just the first 10 seconds. He finishes his routine slicing Pimp Me Up by Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. There's a verse at the end of the song that goes, I'm the bow-legged brother, there'll never be another, bought a mansion for my mother. Jeff did a breakdown, cutting the last line in the syllables, and I bought a mansion for my, and then he held it, letting the clock run out, and at 29 seconds right before the buzzer, he released the last word, mother. I don't know if that's, by the way, how the song really sounds. I never heard that song before. The buzzer sounded and the crowd lost it. The judges were jumping out of their seats and walking around with their hands on their heads. Jeff's scratches were so clean, sharp, and calculated that people realized they were witnessing the evolution of the art form. DJ Jazzy Jeff was now serving notice that the road to world supremacy rolled through Philly. Jeff was flawless that night, and when it was all said and done, the 1986 World Supreme DJ was a kid who spent most of his life in a basement in Southwest Philly. My DJ, DJ Jazzy Jeff. Afterward, we all piled into our single room at the Marriott Marquis. We knew something big had just happened. Eric B. and Rakim even came to the room to personally congratulate Jeff. We weren't quite sure where this was all going, but we had a sense that some important fuse had just been lit. We stayed up all night, laughing, dreaming, plotting, planning. That night was the first night I realized that the possibilities hip-hop presented me far outstretched anything else I had dared hope for. My whole life, my parents' hope for me had been predicated on education and hard work. I was supposed to go to college. I was supposed to get a good job. I was supposed to move up in the world. And as the self-designated golden child, I had always committed to living up to my parents' hopes and dreams. I couldn't imagine it otherwise. But by the time we drove home the next morning, New York disappeared behind us. I was struck with overwhelming conviction. I am not going to college. Danny Goodman had cash. He was about 5'6" and heavyset. Not fat, but thick in a way that he could hurt you if he had to. Approaching 40, he was a Winfield old head. When you would see him standing in the corner, it was only briefly because he was above those fools. He was doing real shit. Danny was the little brother of Lawrence Goodman, founder of the Pop Arts Record, one of the first New York-based hip-hop labels. Lawrence was from Philly, but he was killing them in NYC. Those first few months back in Philly, me and Jeff were on fire. Jeff was now spending 80% of his time making records and 20% DJing. We had finished 6 or 7 songs on Jeff's Tascam 4-track. He had mixed them as best as he could, but Jeff was becoming increasingly frustrated that his equipment couldn't quite reproduce the sounds that were trapped in his head. I had recently purchased the Sharp 777, the original hip-hop boombox. It was one of the first times I noticed a major corporation responding to the demands of our burgeoning art form. The 777 was a loud-ass, heavy-ass radio. You had to be strong to carry that thing around, and you had to carry it because for some reason, if you sat it on the ground, it drained your expensive 10D batteries way faster. Best of all, the 777 had dual high-speed cassette replication capabilities, so I'd take the cassettes that me and Jeff made home with me, and I'd stay up all night high-speed dubbing our demos. This was the old days where you had to do one tape at a time. It was dull and monotonous, you know, like building a brick wall when you're fucking 9, but I needed it to be done, so I did it. I then handed those tapes out to everybody. I didn't care if you even knew what hip-hop was. If you got 2 ears in a tape deck, then my name's the Fresh Prince, it says it right here on my pants, and I've got a tape, you got it here. Overbrook High was situated in Hilltop, and Hilltop was run by about 30 dudes who called themselves the Hilltop Hustlers. One of the top rappers in the crew was Steady B, and Stead was Lawrence Goodman's nephew. The word on the street was that his uncle had just given him a deal and he had music coming out later that year. I wanted Stead to get my tape to Lawrence. The problem was I was from across the bridge in Winfield, and if there was one thing that Hilltop Hustlers would never do, it's help a nigga from Winfield. But then it hit me. Danny Goodman lives in Winfield. Maybe he'll pass our tape to Lawrence. Dana and Lawrence, like many brothers, had a bit of sibling rivalry going on. Dana saw the money his brother was making with his record label, and he hoped to start a label of his own. He called up me and Jeff and said he wanted to meet, so we invited him over to Jeff's to hear us perform. Dana was wearing a dark blue velour Sergio Tacchini sweatsuit, the one with the red and white elasticated wrist and ankle bands. The sweatsuit was zipped open just low enough to reveal his 7 or 8 slim gold chains bouncing off the afro on his chest. He was the older dude who almost got away with dressing like the kids, except he had dress socks on. Dana always wore sunglasses. Indoors, outdoors, nude, midnight, basketball court, church, you never caught Dana not rocking his shades. That day, Dana pulled up in front of Jeff's house in a brand new 4-door steel steel blue Audi 4000 CS Quattro 5-speed. And for the first time in my life, I saw a phone in the car. It was the first car phone ever. It was a rotary dial house phone that somehow worked in his car. Dana stepped out on Rodman Street. He was a boss. He was loud. He was a showman. And the sun was banging off his pinky ring. Me and Jeff were standing on his mom's porch. Dana saw us, threw his arms wide open, and in his low, weathered baritone voice yelled out to the kids playing and the neighbors passing, "Yo, there they go," pointing to me and Jeff. "That's them, y'all. Y'all better get y'all autographs now. That's DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. Them boys about to do something." He called me and Jeff down. "Come here, y'all. Give me some love." Me and Jeff stepped down to the sidewalk and Dana hugged us like a proud father. "Love what y'all did up in New York, holding it down for Philly." Me and Jeff smiled. "Well, you know what we do," I said. Just then, one of Jeff's neighbors, a dude a few years older named Keith, called out, "Hey, Dana, that you, man? Oh, shit, it's Dana Goodman. What you slumming, man?" Keith and Dana shook hands, one of those long, elaborate handshakes with multiple steps from a previous generation, which also didn't go with Dana's sweatsuit. "What brings you around these parts?" Keith asked. "Oh, you don't know I'm here to talk to these boys about a little business," Dana said. "Business?" Keith looked at me and Jeff. His energy slightly shifted, but our youth and excitement blinded us to the subtleties. Keith pulled Dana aside, put his arm around him. "You know, this is Jimmy Townsend's little brother, right?" Dana looked over at Jeff. "Jimmy Townsend's brother?" Keith got up real close to Dana and whispered something in his ear that we couldn't hear. Dana looked down and started nodding. Yeah, I got you. Man, it's just business. I'm trying to help them." "Family," Keith said, loud enough for us to hear this time. He then said his goodbyes and went back down the street. Dana came down to the basement. Me and Jeff let him hear everything we had. Dana picked the two songs he liked the most. The first was called Just One of Those Days. Just One of Those Days features the slow 92 BPM groove where I rapped about having one of those days where everything goes wrong. For the chorus, Jeff sampled Irvin Berlin's Puddin' on the Ritz, a 1928 ragtime joint that was the first song ever performed in a film by an interracial ensemble. It was pure jazzy Jeff mixing old-time highbrow music with the scratches and rhythms of hip-hop. It crystallized our musical dynamic. Jeff's musical sophistication and in-depth knowledge married to my natural storytelling and humor. Second song was Girls Ain't Nothing But Trouble, the one inspired by Grandmaster Caz's Yvette. This time, Jazz sampled the theme song from the famous 1960s sitcom I Dream of Jeannie. He used a brand new Roland 909 drum machine and he detuned the toms to make them sound like a bass line. I told a story tonight in Judy Stewart's basement when my exquisite lovemaking almost got me frostbitten. Dana loved it. He was cracking up. "Yo, did that really happen? Tell the truth. That happened for real?" "Yeah, man," I said. "That was a rough night." He burst out laughing. "Boy, y'all some talented, funny niggas," he said. Hip-hop has evolved so much over the decades that listening to those songs now I cringe. They sound so simplistic and repetitive, but back then, what we were doing was revolutionary. Jeff and I played with the structure of songs in a way that no one else in hip-hop had done until that point. Finally, he said Jeff and I. I was so sick of reading him say me and this person, me and this person, me and this person. Like, thank you for... We had lyricless courses. We had verses that were half samples, half raps. I was building verses that constructed a full story, each verse leading into the next, begging the listener to finish the song to find out what happened by the end. It was a new day. Dare I say, it was fresh. Dana was bobbing his head to the beat, clapping his hands, stomping, and then finally playing as if he couldn't take it anymore. He said, "That's enough. That's enough. Turn it off." Jeff hit the stop button on the 4-track. If we had been in a cartoon, Dana would have spinning dollar signs in his eyes. But in real life, he thumbed the gold chains on his chest and said, "Oh, man. What y'all say we make a record?" Me and Jeff snapped. Me and Jeff. We were hyped, jumping, high-fiving, yelling. We were so naive. We thought that was it. You just invite a guy to your house and he says, "Let's make a record," and then boom, you're a star. We didn't realize that Dana didn't even have a company yet. He had no distribution, very few connections in radio or television, and Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince were his first foray into the music business. A week later, he walked in Studio 4, a professional recording studio that Dana found in downtown Philly. It's hard to describe what Jeff's face looked like when he entered the main control room. It was as if he were a 17-year-old virgin walking into the set of a porno movie and finding out that he was the star. Dana presented us with a recording contract and we signed it. We had never been in a real recording studio before, so we weren't really sure what to do or how it worked. Dana had at least been in with his brother on many of the pop artist hits. He had ideas of how it should be and what he wanted to hear. The contract dictated that Dana was the producer and co-songwriter of our music. He started telling Jeff to change tempos, to shift pitches, to add cuts, and adjust sounds. Jeff disagreed with many of Dana's creative choices. In Dana's mind, since he paid for the studio time, he was in charge, and Jeff was fuming. But this was our big shot, our one chance, so we didn't want to mess it up. Just one of those days got mangled in that recording session. The tempos between the verses and chorus were different. The song inexplicably changed keys. The mix was awful. Jeff still hates that track, even though we recorded it later. But Girls got through the record session mostly unscathed and still held up as a song. Despite Jeff's grumblings, it was decided that Girls would be our first release as a single. Just One of Those Days would be on the B-side. We'd release them to build up some hype while we recorded our first album. The Girls Ain't Nothing But Trouble single came out in March 1986, although nobody knew it because it was on Dana's new record label, Word Up Records. No offices, no employees, no distribution. The single wasn't even in stores. Dana was selling the vinyl out of the trunk of his car. Nothing was happening. To his credit, he was doing everything he knew how to do. He was a hustler. He spent his own money and he absolutely truly believed in DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. Even though nobody knew we had a record out, Jeff's win at the Battle for World Supremacy meant that promoters started calling and put him in shows. And I came as a part of the package deal. We started hitting the nicer clubs around Philly. We played Delaware and Atlantic City. The shows were getting big enough that there were contracts. And on one occasion, we needed to sign and fax one back by 5 p.m. the same day or we'd lose the gig. Jeff and I were scrambling. Who the hell do we know with a fax machine? That's funny. J.O. was sitting in J.O.'s corner of Jeff's basement. It was his own world. Reading the back of an Ohio Players album cover, the one with the naked girl on the inside with all the honey all over, Jeff and I were getting more and more frantic, trying to prevent this $1,500 from evaporating as 5 p.m. approached. Neither of us had a fax machine. I figured mom might have access to one at work, but it was already late on a Friday. Daddy-O didn't like that newfangled shit, and the Word Up Records only had a rotary dial car phone in his mobile business office. JL sat there quietly as Jeff and I became aggravated with each other. You got all this computer shit down here, but you don't have a damn fax machine, I said. You could get a sampling guitar pedal from a Nazi in Vienna and you don't have no way of faxing a damn contract? How is it my job? What do you do in the group? JL never looked up, and in the bored monotone voice he said as much to the Ohio Players girl as to me and Jeff. I have a fax machine, and that's how James Laster became our manager. Jeez, this is just a well-written book. I'm sweating because I be having to turn off the AC when I record because it makes too much noise. But I'm also sweating because this is a good fucking book. A lot of this stuff, I try to connect it to real life. You feel me? So it's like, yeah, you're getting a book, but at the same time, you're getting insightful opinions along with it. But after a while, you just gotta stop and take a step back and realize there's a great concept from Jim Rohn. Look at the 5 people you spend the most time with, because that's who you are. This is an idea I've always understood innately. Deep down inside, I knew that my dreams would be made or broken by the people I chose to surround myself with. Confucius had it right. It's nearly impossible for the quality of your life to be higher than the quality of your friends. And by the grace of God, there has never been a single moment in my life that I've looked to my left or to my right and not seen an extraordinary friend. Someone who believed in me and was down for whatever. I don't know, bro. I don't know. From the outside looking in, it don't look like your wife fall into that situation. JL was in his final year of law school, and while it might have been a casual act of convenience for Jeff and me to hire him as our manager, we quickly realized that JL was not a casual kind of guy. He started making contracts with all of our venues and concert promoters and began requesting documentation and financial information about record sales and studio costs from Dana, and when he wasn't satisfied with the responses, he hired a New York City attorney to oversee all of our business dealings. JL was one of those guys who didn't care about fame or money. He wasn't flashy, and he didn't want fancy clothes or sparkly jewels. He prided himself on defending the people he loved. LL Cool J would kill for Will Smith's career. JL read the recording contract we had signed with Dana. He had highlighted and circled and X'd out clauses which didn't really matter because we had already signed it. Perched on JL's corner with a perplexed look on his face, he asked, "Did you two read this contract?" Jeff and I kind of glanced at each other. "I didn't read it. Did you?" I said. Jeff shook his head. And then to JL, said, "Nah, what does it say?" That was not the answer JL was hoping for. It says that y'all are stupid, and it's spelled like stupid. Dana was always upbeat, telling us how hard he was working and how much money he was spending to promote the record. Jeff had heard it a couple times on What Around Midnight. What was W-A-T in capital letters. I'm assuming that's a radio station. Jeff heard it a couple times on What Around Midnight, and a few friends and family members had caught it, but it was getting spotty airplay at best. You gotta bribe radio stations. You gotta wine and dine people. You know, it's competitive. They be trying to drum me up. They playing it though. Y'all just not catching it. Just give me some time. Y'all gonna be huge. Since I had secretly decided that I wasn't going to college, I stopped doing homework. I didn't study for tests, and I didn't even show up for a lot of my classes. As far as Daddy was concerned, if I was disciplined at the ice house, performed my tasks impeccably, and wasn't getting myself arrested or killed, he was cool. But Mom was friends with all of my teachers at Overbrook, and she snapped. Mom's supermost parenting mission was for me and all of her children to go to college. For her, college was everything. It was what she had picked up and moved to Philly for. It was what she tolerated Daddy-O's drinking and violence. It was a big part of why she moved back to Woodcrest. To her, a college education was the fundamental bedrock of a successful life, and without it, I was doomed. Hope sustains life. Hope is the elixir of survival during our darkest times. The ability to envision and imagine a brighter day gives meaning to our suffering and renders it bearable. When we lose hope, we lose our central source of strength and resilience. My mother's hopes for her kids had sustained her through the darkest years of her marriage, but now I had developed hopes of my own. I had hip-hop hopes. I had hopes for albums and being on stage in front of 50,000 people shouting, "Ho!" when I told them to. These hopes were now empowering and sustaining me. I would have died if I had given them up. I couldn't. I wouldn't. It came to a head one afternoon towards the end of my senior year. I hadn't come home after school. I had gone straight just to rehearse. It was about 10 p.m. when I finally made it home. I could feel Mom before I even put my key in the door. Sure enough, Mom was in the kitchen waiting for me. "Hey, Mom," I said, mocked joyfully. "Are you having a problem?" she said evenly. "No, I'm good, Mom." "No, apparently you're having a big problem, or at least you're about to." "What's up, Mom? What happened?" "I just talked to Mrs. Stubbs. After 4 years, you've forgotten where your classrooms are?" "No, Mom, I was just doing a lot of stuff." "What are you doing that's more important than getting into college? You know these schools are going to look at your final senior grades. We've come too far for you to throw your life away now. What is your problem?" Mom's voice and her posture denoted anger, but I saw something else beneath that. She was terrified. My heart melted. "Mom, I've been working with Jeff for almost a year. People say he's the best DJ in the world. Rap is blowing up. It's on the radio. It's on MTV. And Run DMC went to Japan. I'm telling you, Mom, we're making songs that are good as what anybody else is doing. Every time we perform, people go crazy. We found a record producer who's putting up money. We have a manager. Nobody in Philly could rap as good as me. Everybody says we're going to be stars. I just need some time to make it happen." "No, you can't be a rapper," she said bluntly. "What? Why not?" "Because I don't know what that is. You listen to me right now. You will not cut another class. You will not miss another test. You will complete every single piece of homework that's assigned to you. You're going to college in the fall, period. Mom, just listen to the music. I've been hearing your hippity hoppity around for your whole life. That's a hobby. That's not a career. Good night." She stood up from the kitchen table, turned to walk away, and I stopped her with probably the worst thing I ever said to my mother. "Mom, I'm not going to college." I think it's interesting. I've always heard the story of Will Smith as he became a rapper. He always tells it as if it was his dad that was like the pressure for him to go to college. The way I understood the story was that his dad told him, "You have a year to make this music thing pop, and then you got to go to college." And then he took that year, made this music thing pop, met Quincy Jones, and then, you feel me? So, but that's how I understood it. I was here on the backs of generations who had struggled through hardship and sacrifice, the blessed recipients in a long lineage of striving African Americans to have a stable, educated, middle-class life in America. My mom and daddy's generation grew up in the throes of segregation and immense poverty. Gigi's family had escaped the Jim Crow South. My mother had fought through decades of school district bureaucracies, financial uncertainty, and daddy's bullshit to get me to this point. And she was going to be damned if I didn't go to college because of some music I was doing at basement parties with homeboys named Jazz and Ready Rock. Our hopes had finally collided, and these hopes were inherently incompatible with each other. One had to give way. One of us was going to have our heart broken. The thing I've learned over the years about advice is that no one can accurately predict the future, but we all think we can. So advice at its best is one person's limited perspective of the infinite possibilities before you. People's advice is based on their fears, their experiences, their prejudices, and at the end of the day, their advice is just that. It's theirs, not yours. When people give you advice, they're basing it on what they would do, what they can perceive, what they think you can do. But the bottom line is, while yes, it is true that we are all subject to a series of universal laws, patterns, tides, and currents, all of which somewhat predictable, you are the first time you ever happened. You are the first time you've ever happened. You and now are a unique occurrence of which you are the most reliable measure of all the possibilities. That's what I was looking when I purchased this book. That's what I was actually looking for. I really appreciate the fact that, you feel me, Will Smith has blessed us with what Will Smith has blessed us with. I've always loved the scene in The Pursuit of Happiness on the basketball court in which Jaden's character shoots the ball and yells, "I'm going pro!" My character, Chris Gardner, discourages him from pursuing basketball but catches himself. Don't ever let somebody tell you can't do something. Not even me. You got a dream, you got to protect it. People can't do something themselves. They want to tell you you can't do it. If you want something, go get it, period. This is my last time until the end of this chapter, I promise. But am I being too emotional in this one? Cause that was the first movie that ever made me cry before. And it wasn't that scene on the basketball court. It was at the end where he put his hands up and he had finally got that. Oh my God. I probably have slandered Will a little bit while reading this book. It was all jokes. It was all jokes. I be talking, you know. It be jokes. It be jokes. I love Will Smith. Don't let anybody ever lie to you. It's in my book of my favorite actors is like Marlon Wayans, Will Smith. I know I didn't mention Marlon Wayans when I said Will Smith was one of the biggest stars in the world, but come on, we know that's a personal preference. Me and him have the same name. My mother's college education saved her life, which solidified her a fundamental premise. A college education is the only armor against the brutality of this world, and without a college education, it would be condemned to certain destruction. This was not her advice to me, this was her truth. To her, being a rapper was impossible. But I'm not my mother. Just as her education saved and defended her from the hardships of her early life, performance in hip-hop has saved me from mine. It's clear when I look back now. While we were gridlocked and colliding and arguing, the reality was both things were true. One was true for her and the other was true for me. But at the time, neither of us could compromise because it would mean destroying everything we stood for. Daddy was caught in the middle. Mom was demanding that he make me go to college, and I was begging him to please understand what I was saying. It was clear that he was going to have a final word. Daddy was going to be the judge, the jury, and the executioner of the hopes and dreams of either his wife or his son. Daddy deliberated for about a week. He would take me for a drive, mom for a walk. He'd ask questions and listen to us talk. In the meantime, Woodcrest was as cold as the ice house. My mother and I was cordial. We kept it on a high bye. And then one evening, Daddy-O called us both into the kitchen. My mother and I sat down at the table, and Daddy-O leaned against the stove. Daddy-O had been here before, except last time he was sitting in my seat. When he was being told by his parents what he could and couldn't do, we had so loved his camera, but he'd been told it was just a hobby, not a career. At his heart, Daddy-O was an artist who had been robbed of his dreams and passions because they were unrealistic and impractical. But he also knew firsthand the viciousness of this world against the uneducated black kid. Everything Daddy-O ever did, somebody had told him he couldn't do it. He was supposed to get a job because there was no way he could start his own business. People told him there was no way white people would work for him. There was no way real supermarkets would buy ice from a black man. He lived against the ferocious headwind of doubt and discouragement, but he did it all anyway. So here's what we're going to do, Daddy-O said. You got 1 year. Mother said she could get all them schools the whole year acceptance till next September. We're going to help you and support you, do anything you think you need to do to succeed. But in 1 year, if it ain't happen, you're going to whichever one of them schools, your mother's choice. That work for you? In my mind, a year was forever. I was ecstatic. He turned to Mom. That work for you? Mom clearly didn't love it, but this is what compromise that kept her dreams alive. She only said one word. Yep. My experiences with my father are a mixed bag, to say the least. But that night in the kitchen at 5943 Woodcrest Avenue, he displayed the most exquisite leadership I had ever seen. That was how a father was supposed to be. Okay, so now I understand. As I get further and further into the book, I'm becoming more invested in the characters outside of Will Smith. And I think that's why it's starting to weigh so heavy on me. Cause there's a lot happening, and there's a lot of stuff that's happening so minor, but in retrospect, we have an understanding that this was huge. That was how a father was supposed to be. A few weeks later, my mother called the dean of the University of Wisconsin, a school where my application had been accepted. She told the dean everything. It's terrible, she said. My son wants to take a gap year. He's doing something called rapping. He's got a manager and some company is paying him to record an album. It all sounds suspect to me, but we were wondering if you could hold his place until September 87. The dean listened patiently. I think that's incredible, Mrs. Smith. What? My mom said. For a young man his age, he would never get that kind of life experience here. He should absolutely do it. My mother was floored. And certainly will hold a spot for him. If his album doesn't work out, he can attend next year. That's no problem. Okay, this is my last time stopping. And this is more so just little bit of life advice. People will tell you going to college is such an amazing experience and you learn so much. And I wish people would understand between the ages of 18 and 22, 23, there's a level of growth that happens in your life that comes along with being legally responsible for yourself, having the ability to do certain things, not being tied to the public school system, you feel me, on such an extraneous schedule. And you're going to grow and learn, and you're going to meet the closest people to you probably for your entire life in that little time period, regardless. Like you gotta do you at that point in your life, or else you get to the point where you're 30 and 40 and you don't know who you are. You have no idea who you are. You just know algebra. You feel me? A few weeks later in early May, about a month before my graduation, I was bagging ice at ACRAC. In case you were wondering, bagging ice is just as dull and monotonous as it sounds, and you always hurt your back. The aluminum scoop held about 4 pounds of ice, 2.5 scoops into a 10-pound bag, which you then spin to twist the top and then drop it into the time machine. Then toss the bag into the shopping cart. If you stack them correctly, you can get about 24 bags into one shopping cart. Then you roll the cart into the freezer, take the bags out one at a time, and stack them. In a 4-hour session, one person could do 200, 250 bags. It's repetitive, and you just kind of zone out for a few hours while you do it. I'd always like to do it at night because that's when Power 99 played hip hop. I listened to the Power 9 at 9 countdown, getting lost in my own world and staying up on the new hip hop joints. I'd rap along, memorizing my favorite songs and shovel on beat, inventing my own rhymes. But that night, I was quiet. For the first time, I understood the old saying, be careful what you wish for because you just might get it. I had held my ground against my parents and they gave in, but now I had to prove it. Number 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. We got Cool Mo D's brand new track. Go see the doctor. I was walking down the street, rocking my beat, clapping my hands and stomping my feet. I saw a little lady so neat and petite. She was so sweet, yes, and I wanted to meet. Yo. Original hip hop was truly trash, bro. Like, it was like I walked down the street and I saw a man. I said, "What's up?" And I gave him my hand. He shook it. Like, niggas would just, this is what's funny to me about old school hip hop. Niggas used to just rap about the fact that they was rapping. 80% of old hip hop songs, 80% of hip hop songs before I was born in the 90s was about the fact that the person rapping was rapping. Prove me wrong. I mean, I'm as good as Cool Mo D, I thought, trying to psych myself up, but my mom had gotten into my head. What if she's right? What if a rapper isn't a real thing? And only 1 year? Is that enough? This last year just blazed by. Maybe I should go to college. I did do all of this with Jeff while I went to high school. Maybe I'll go to college and still do music. Scoop, bag, scoop, bag, scoop, bag. I am not trying to be living at home. I need my own spot, my own money, my own car. Number 4! The Beastie Boys are back with Hold It Now, Hit It. Nah, chill, read ill when I started to chill, when I filled my pockets with $90 bills, sipping pints of aloe, I don't know. Sipping pints of L out the windowsill when I get my fill, I'm chilly chill. Bro, these raps are trash, dog. I haven't heard these, so I'm not sure what the, like, you feel me? I'm not sure what the cadence is to them. I'm not sure what the melody is. I'm not sure how the beats go. I don't even know the tone these rappers are using. I just know that these words are ass. I know that these words are ass. Scoop, bag, scoop, bag, scoop, bag. Man, I'm definitely as good as the Beastie Boys, except for they're on the radio and I'm bagging ice. Maybe bagging ice is my destiny, but man, if I'm stuck here with Daddy on 10 years, I'm gonna sever my own head with the dull end of this ice scoop. I mean, Run DMC and Beastie Boys had to have their own versions of bagging ice, right? Or maybe they were flukes, 1 in a million. Number 3. Check it out, y'all. Hot off the presses from Stetsasonics' new debut album, On Fire. This is a new one you guys been asking for. It's called My Rhyme. But I'm 1 in a million. Jeff's 1 in a million. My mom is not my target audience. How she think she gonna tell me if a rapper is good or not? She judging stuff she don't even understand. And what about Melanie? You cannot keep a girlfriend if you running off to some college somewhere. She'll be tossed up with some other joker in 2 weeks. Yes, bro. She gonna be tossed up. Will's early inner monologues wasn't doing it for me. But when he hit like, when he hit like 15, 16 years old, I feel you, bro. I know how you feel, bro. I be seeing things. Scoop, bag, scoop, bag, scoop, bag. And we're back with number 2. It's your boy's old favorite. That's right. Run DMC. My Adidas. This was my jam. It snapped me out of my funk. I was back to shoveling on beat and rapping along. My Adidas. Walk through concert doors and roam all over Coliseum floors. I stepped on stage at Live Aid and the people gave all the poor got paid. I don't remember that line. I like the song My Adidas. Y'all see I was kind of on beat with it for a little bit and everything. I don't remember that part of the song though. And that's the beginning. I remember the walk through concert doors. Did I just not know none of the rest of the words? Like, I had this on a CD that I used to drive to school listening to in high school. By shoveling picked up pace, completely involuntary. This is power hip hop, I thought. My Adidas touch the sand of a foreign land with mic in hand. I cold took command. Like, how do I not remember these lines of this song? Well, my Riviera was short lived. I couldn't get my mind off my mom. I felt to protect her from Daddy-O. I wasn't brave enough to go with her when she left. And now the hope she had for me, the dreams that had sustained her through all the pain and trouble, I was spitting in the face of that. I couldn't shake the sense that I was failing her again. You be going through it, Will, bro. My Adidas finished playing, and Power 99 went to a commercial break. I realized I had missed the end of the song. Damn, I thought. Not even my Adidas could pull me out of this one. I rolled the final cart into the freezer. I was done for the night. I counted the bags while commercials blared. New mattress sales. Everything must go. Maybe I could sell mattresses, I thought. This shit can't be that hard. I could do hip-hop mattress raps. Get a good night's rest, good sleep routines. Got twins and fools. Got kings and queens. I threw the shovel on the side, closed the machines up, and we're back. With the Power 99 countdown tonight, we have a newcomer to the countdown. Shutting off the lights, I realized I couldn't find my keys. I lost my keys a few times before, and Daddy-O had to come pick me up. I was dreading the thought of having to call him to come get me. Here I am, demanding my independence. About to have to call my daddy to pick me up because I can't find my damn keys. The phones have been off the hook all day. Y'all want to hear these guys. Get ready for our hometown boys. Philly's very own DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. This is Girls Ain't Nothing But Trouble. I totally froze. My mouth was hanging open. For some reason, my heart was pounding. I wanted to scream. I wanted to jump. But at the same time, I didn't want to do anything to bump into the universe and knock my record off the radio. Then those words I knew so well and had repeated hundreds, maybe thousands of times before were coming out of the radio. Listen, homeboys, I mean to bust your bubble, but girls of the world ain't nothing but trouble. It was my voice. That was me on the radio. Me, my rhymes, my voice. I wanted to call people, but I didn't want to miss it. Just last week when I was walking down the street, I observed this lovely lady that I wanted to meet. I ran outside. I went to grab somebody to tell somebody, that's me, y'all. Y'all, that's me. But it was 10 o'clock. Nobody was out there. I started giggling, a knee-jerk reaction that I still have to this day when I find myself extreme emotional circumstances. He laughed before he slapped Chris Rock. He read this book before the Oscars. This book was made. I'm sorry I just went on that long impassioned rant about not making this man's life about the Oscars. But it's like I say, it's like heating water up and then calling it staged when it boils. The truth of the situation is that we shouldn't have even been so surprised by what happened. The truth of the situation is that we should have seen this happen. The truth of the situation is that it's impressive that he managed to not do something like this earlier. I couldn't stop laughing. It was a joyous, blissful laughter. The pure joy of a child waking up on Christmas morning. The joy of discovery, of renewed hope, of new life. The joy of being right about me. And that's the end of chapter 5. Meeting the Fresh Prince is probably how I'm going to title this video because that's what I feel like I just did. Introducing the Fresh Prince. I don't know. I suck at video titles. If I ever post a video and you happen to see it and think, yo, this title fucking sucks. I won't take that offensive if you just drop a real quick comment like, yo, this title's trash, dog. I'm decent. I'm decent with thumbnails. I'm cool. I'm cool with thumbnails. Cause I'm decent with Adobe Suite in general, but oh my God, when it comes to thinking of the titles of stuff, it's cause I don't be trying to clickbait y'all, but the reality of the situation is you need a little bit of clickbait, in order to get people to actually click it. You know what I'm saying? Unless you can just put the entire dialogue of the entire video as the title, you're never going to be 100% accurate in giving it a title. That was stupid. Was what I just said stupid? Maybe what I just said was stupid, and that's the type of thinking why I'm trash at this. I wish I wanted to come up with a name for this little, I guess, series that I'm doing. Just so I didn't have to keep coming up with names, you feel me? So I was just gonna be I bought Will Smith's book because he slapped Chris Rock at the Oscars. Just clickbaity enough, you feel me? And then afterwards, I was going to put chapter 2, chapter 3, until I realized by the time I get to chapter 13, nobody's going to be clicking on videos about Will Smith slapping Chris Rock at the Oscars anymore. And this book is also about more than just Will Smith. I be thinking sometimes of what type of criticisms people could give me in my comment section that I would take heed to and not just look at as hate. Cause some of y'all be mean as hell. Y'all be hurting my feelings. I want you to know if you typed a mean comment on my video, and I didn't respond to it cause I don't do that, but it did hurt my feelings. It hurt my feelings for 30 seconds. And if you left a positive comment that also, you feel me? I like that. Handleless TML. He told me he subscribed right before I sat down to do this. And I fuck with you. I appreciated that. You feel me? That was cool to me. But, back to what I was saying. I be trying to understand what criticisms somebody could leave in the comment section. And then I would understand it to be constructive as opposed to just negativity. Which I try to be really understanding of the difference. But either way, I be trying to think about that. And it's like, the first thing is always, yo, this title sucked. But realistically speaking, if the title sucks, nobody's going to click on the video in the first place. But like, I be open. I'm trying to be, you feel me, better. This is kind of new for me. Like, I've been doing entertainment type stuff for a while. I'm decent speaking into a microphone already because, like, you feel me? I mentioned it briefly earlier. I used to make music and stuff like that. But just sitting here, talking to my camera, the same way that I talk to my dad or something, like, that's still relatively new to me. Knowing what cool edits to throw in. Like in chapter 1, I was so impressed with that Ronnie, Bobby, Ricky, and Mike that I had put in the background when he was naming his friends. Like, I don't know how much what I just said was picked up by the microphone. I'm not exactly sure, but it was probably for the best. I was just ranting. I'm not even talking about the book right now. I'm talking about myself. But if you do want to hear me talk about the book some more, hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, like it. That's what the button's there for.
The microphone is my mistress. I head out, I'm just venting. Fix your mouth like a dentist and you get stopped like a sentence. These niggas pouting and bitching. I'm just counting my Benjamins. Ain't announcing my mission. I just come out with a victory.